Welcome back, Legends. This is HP Fiction. Here we explore powerful Harry Potter what-if stories. What if Harry Potter spoke Parseltongue at the sorting ceremony and Salazar Slytherin declared him his true heir? If you enjoy epic magical videos, subscribe to HP Fiction. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, The Serpent's Voice. The Hogwarts Express had never felt so final. Harry Potter pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the compartment window, watching the Scottish countryside blur into streaks of green and grey. The rain had started an hour ago, thin needles of water that streaked sideways across the glass, distorting the world beyond into something half real, half dream. His reflection stared back at him, a boy with untidy black hair, a scar hidden beneath his fringe, and glasses that were perpetually smudged no matter how many times he cleaned them. He should have felt excited. He was excited, in a distant, buzzing sort of way that reminded him of the bees that used to get trapped in the Dursley's greenhouse. But underneath that buzz was something else. Something cold and waiting. The last few weeks had been a hurricane of revelations. A giant man with a beard like a thicket had broken down a door to tell him he was a wizard. A magical school existed, hidden from the Muggle world. His parents hadn't died in a car crash, they'd been murdered by a dark wizard who, somehow, had failed to kill Harry himself. And now, here he was, hurtling toward a castle that existed in the pages of fairy tales, carrying a wand he'd purchased from a shop that smelled of old wood and secrets. He was supposed to be the boy who lived. He didn't feel like anyone worth living for. "Are you all right, Harry?" Ron Weasley's voice cut through the fog of his thoughts. Harry turned from the window, blinking away the rain-streaked blur in his vision. Ron sat across from him, his freckled face creased with concern, a half-eaten chocolate frog melting in his palm. The frog's legs twitched weakly, as if attempting one last escape before succumbing to the warmth of his grip. "I'm fine," Harry said, and the words came out flatter than he'd intended. "Just thinking." Ron nodded sagely, as if this was a perfectly reasonable explanation. "Yeah, I get that. My mum always says I think too much, but then Fred says I don't think at all, so I'm not sure who's right." "Probably Fred. He's usually right about things like that." Harry felt the corner of his mouth twitch. The Weasleys were like nothing he'd ever experienced, loud, chaotic, and fiercely warm in a way that made his chest ache with something he couldn't name. Ron had been his first real friend, the first person who'd looked at him without pity or suspicion or that weird, reverent awe that seemed to follow him wherever he went. "Your brothers seem nice," Harry offered, because he didn't know what else to say. Ron snorted. "They're mental, more like. Fred and George are already planning how to sneak into the restricted section of the library. Percy's been lecturing them about school rules since we left King's Cross. I think he actually enjoys it. He's got a book about proper wizard etiquette that he reads before bed." "Sounds like my cousin," Harry said, and then immediately wished he hadn't. The comparison felt wrong somehow. Percy Weasley, for all his pompousness, was clearly loved by his family. Dudley was. Dudley. Ron's expression softened with understanding. "Your Muggle family, right? The ones who didn't tell you about being a wizard?" Harry nodded, his throat tight. "They didn't exactly keep it a secret. They just didn't talk about it. At all. Like it didn't exist." "That's mental," Ron said again, but this time there was no humor in it. "I can't imagine not knowing. My whole family's magical. Well, except for Aunt Muriel, but we don't talk about her. She's a squib, you see, and she's got this thing about." He stopped abruptly, his ears turning pink. "Sorry. I'm rambling. Mum says I ramble. When I'm nervous." "Why are you nervous?" Ron looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "Why are you nervous?" "We're about to be sorted. They're going to put a hat on our heads and it's going to decide our entire future at this school. What if it puts me in Slytherin? My whole family's been Gryffindor for generations. My dad would never let me hear the end of it. He'd probably disown me. I'd have to live in the shed with the gnomes." "They wouldn't disown you. You don't know my family." Harry didn't, and that was precisely the problem. He knew Ron's family existed, he'd met Fred and George, and Percy, and the smallest one whose name he couldn't quite remember, but he didn't know them the way Ron did. The way Ron knew his own brothers and sisters and parents and aunts and uncles and cousins and. Harry pushed the thought away. It was useless to think about. He'd spent 11 years with the Dursleys, and they'd made it abundantly clear that he wasn't part of their family. He'd never been part of anything. He was the boy who lived, yes, but that was just a title. It wasn't a life. It wasn't a home. Ron was still talking, his words tumbling out in a nervous rush. And Percy says the hat takes your preferences into account, but I don't think it does because how would it know? And if it puts me in Slytherin, I'll just. It won't, Harry said, and he was surprised by the certainty in his own voice. You're not Slytherin material. Ron blinked. How do you know? Harry shrugged. You're too honest. And you care too much about what your family thinks. Slytherins are supposed to be cunning and ambitious and all that, right? I don't think they spend half their time worrying about whether their mum will be disappointed in them. Ron stared at him for a long moment, and then a slow grin spread across his freckled face. You know what, Harry? That's actually sort of comforting. In a weird, roundabout way. Glad I could help. The train whistle blew, long and mournful. And both of them jumped. The compartment door slid open to reveal a bushy-haired girl with slightly too large front teeth and an expression of intense determination. Have either of you seen a toad? She demanded. A boy named Neville's lost one. It's very important. He's terribly upset. Ron shook his head, and the girl's eyes narrowed in assessment. You're Harry Potter, aren't you? I've read all about you. You're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. You're quite famous. Harry felt his cheeks flush. I'm not, I didn't know. I'm Hermione Granger, she said, as if this explained everything. I've already read all the textbooks for this year. Have you? It's quite interesting how they structure the curriculum. I've made a study schedule that I think will be very efficient, though Professor McGonagall said we should wait until after the sorting before we. We haven't read the textbooks, Ron interrupted, and there was a defensive edge to his voice. We were busy, being on a train and meeting people and not being complete swats about everything. Hermione's face tightened. I'm not a swat. I'm just prepared. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. A swat is someone who studies excessively for the sake of appearing clever. I study because I genuinely want to learn. There's nothing wrong with intellectual curiosity. Ron opened his mouth to respond, but Harry cut him off before the argument could escalate. We haven't seen a toad. But if we do, we'll let you know. Hermione looked at him, her expression softening slightly. Thank you, Harry. That's very kind of you. She turned to Ron, her eyes narrowing again. I'll be in the prefect's carriage if you need me. Though I doubt you will. You seem like the type who doesn't ask for help even when you clearly need it. And with that, she was gone, her bushy hair disappearing around the door frame like a retreating storm cloud. Ron stared at the empty doorway. What was that about? I think she likes you. Ron's face went through several shades of red. That's not, she doesn't, I don't. Relax, Harry said, and this time he did smile. It's a joke. Ron's shoulders sagged with relief. Oh. Right. Good. Because she's terrifying. Did you see the way she looked at me? Like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. And she's already read all the textbooks. All of them. How is that even possible? We just got our letters a few weeks ago. She probably ordered them early, Harry said, though he suspected it was more complicated than that. Hermione Granger was clearly the sort of person who prepared for everything. She'd probably had her Hogwarts letter framed and mounted on the wall the moment it arrived. The train was slowing now, the landscape outside the window shifting from rolling hills to something darker and more wooded. Harry could see lights in the distance, torches, maybe, or lanterns, flickering through the rain like fireflies caught in a storm. "We're almost there," Ron said, his earlier nervousness returning in full force. "I can feel it." Harry nodded, his stomach clenching with a mix of excitement and dread. He'd known this moment was coming, had been waiting for it since the day Hagrid had appeared in that shack on the rock, but now that it was here, he didn't know what to do with himself. His hands were shaking slightly, his palms damp against the fabric of his robes. "It's just a hat," he told himself. "Just a talking hat that decides where you belong for the next 7 years of your life. No pressure." "Come on," Ron said, grabbing his trunk and standing up. "We'd better get changed into our robes. It's bad luck to be caught in your muggle clothes during the sorting. Mum told me that." Harry grabbed his own trunk, the worn leather warm against his fingers. He'd packed everything Hagrid had given him, the robes, the textbooks, the potions ingredients. The telescoping cauldron, the brass scales, the wand with its phoenix feather core. Everything except the photo album. That he kept in his pocket, close to his heart, where no one could see it. He didn't know why he'd brought it. It wasn't like he could look at it during the sorting. But it felt wrong to leave it behind, like he was abandoning the last piece of his parents he had left. The first years huddled together in the darkness, shivering against the cold that crept through their thin robes. The rain had stopped during the carriage ride, but the damp remained, clinging to their clothes and hair like a lingering ghost. Harry stood at the front of the group, his breath misting in the chilly air. Ahead of them, the boats bobbed gently on the black water, waiting to carry them across the lake to the castle beyond. And what a castle it was, towers and turrets rising against the night sky, windows glowing with warm light, a silhouette that looked like something out of a storybook. Except storybooks didn't usually feature giant squids. "There," someone gasped, pointing at the water. "Did you see that?" Harry squinted into the darkness. For a moment, he saw nothing but the reflection of the castle on the lake's surface, shimmering and distorted. And then something moved, a massive shape beneath the water, dark and sinuous, sliding through the depths like a shadow-given form. "It's the giant squid," said a voice behind him. "He's harmless. Mostly." Harry turned to find a boy with dark skin and a quiet smile standing at his shoulder. He was holding a toad in his hands, the same toad that Hermione had been looking for earlier. "Neville Longbottom," the boy said, offering a hesitant hand. "You're Harry Potter, right? Everyone's been talking about you." Harry shook his hand, noticing the way Neville's grip was slightly damp with nervous sweat. "Just Harry." Neville nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "That's what I keep telling people. But they don't listen. They just see the scar and think they know everything about you." He paused, his expression turning thoughtful. "It's funny, isn't it? How people think a scar makes you special. My Gran's got a scar on her knee from when she fell off her broom in 1962, and nobody's ever written a book about her." Harry laughed, a real laugh, not the forced one he'd been using all day. "Your Gran sounds like an interesting person." "She's terrifying," Neville said, but there was affection in his voice. "She's always telling me I need to be more like my father. But I don't know how to be like him. I never even met him." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with shared understanding. Harry knew that feeling, the ache of trying to live up to a legacy you didn't fully understand, the weight of expectations from people who'd never even seen your parents' faces. "I never met mine either," Harry said softly. "My parents, I mean. They died when I was a baby." Neville's face crumpled with sympathy. "I know. I'm sorry. That must be, I mean, at least I have my Gran. She's not exactly warm and fuzzy, but she's there. You've got no one, do you?" Harry opened his mouth to say something, to deny it, to deflect, to pretend that he was fine and didn't need anyone, but the words wouldn't come. Because Neville was right. He had no one. Just a photo album full of strangers and a scar that marked him as something he didn't understand. "I've got Ron," he said finally, and even as he said it, he knew it sounded pathetic. One friend. One friend he'd known for less than a day. But Neville nodded, accepting this without question. "Then you've got more than most," he said. My gran always says that having one true friend is better than having 100 acquaintances. And Ron's a Weasley, right? The Weasleys are good people. Everyone says so. Everyone. Everyone in the wizarding world. They're a pure-blood family, but they don't care about that sort of thing. They're friendly with everyone, even Muggleborns and half-bloods, and Neville stopped abruptly, his cheeks flushing. I mean, not that I wasn't trying to. It's fine, Harry said, because he didn't know what else to say. I know what I am. Neville nodded, looking relieved that Harry hadn't taken offense. Right. Yes. Good. I think we should get in the boats now. The others are already boarding. Harry looked up and saw that Neville was right. The first years were climbing into the boats, their excited chatter filling the night air. Hagrid stood at the front of the group, his massive bulk silhouetted against the castle's glow, urging them along with jovial commands. Come on, then, Hagrid called. No time to dawdle. The sorting ceremony's waiting, and you don't want to keep the headmaster waiting. He's got a thing about punctuality, Professor Dumbledore does. Thinks it's the most important virtue after courage and cleverness. Harry climbed into one of the boats, Ron sliding in beside him, their trunks barely fitting in the cramped space. Neville scrambled in after them, clutching his toad to his chest, and Hermione slipped in at the last moment, her expression determined. This is so exciting, she breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the castle's reflection on the water. I've read about this in Hogwarts, a history, but it's completely different actually being here. The castle was built in the 11th century, you know, and it's been expanded and renovated dozens of times since then. The charms on the ceiling are supposed to be thousands of years old. Blimey, do you ever stop talking? Ron muttered under his breath. Hermione's mouth tightened into a thin line. I'm just trying to share information. I thought people would appreciate knowing things about the castle they're about to live in for the next 7 years. I think it's interesting, Harry said quickly, before the argument could escalate. I don't know much about magic or wizarding history. Everything's new to me. Hermione's expression softened slightly. Well, if you ever want to learn, I've got a lot of books you could borrow. I've read most of them already, so I don't need them all at once. Ron made a gagging noise behind his hand, but Hermione either didn't notice or chose not to respond. The boats were moving now, gliding across the black water toward the castle, and the sight was so breathtaking that even Ron fell silent. The castle grew larger and larger as they approached, its turrets and battlements rendered in sharp detail against the starry sky. Lights flickered in the windows, candlelight, Harry realized, real flames that danced and swayed as if alive. A great arched doorway loomed ahead, its stone worn smooth by centuries of students passing through. Harry felt his heart pound against his ribs. This was it. This was the moment he'd been waiting for since the day he'd received his letter. The moment he stepped into a world that had been waiting for him all along. You're not a freak, he told himself fiercely. You're a wizard. You belong here. But even as the thought formed, he couldn't quite believe it. The Dursleys' voices echoed in his head, their cruelty ringing clear even after all these weeks. Freak. 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 All right there, Harry. Ron's voice cut through the fog of his thoughts. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Harry said, and this time the words came out steadier. Just nervous. Ron nodded, his earlier bravado completely gone. Yeah, me too. The sorting's the worst part, everyone says. After that, it's all just classes and homework and getting into trouble. But the sorting, that's the bit where they decide who you really are. Who you're going to be. Who you really are. Harry didn't know who he really was. He'd spent 11 years being told he was worthless, and then a few weeks being told he was famous, and neither label felt quite right. He was just Harry. Harry Potter, the boy with the scar and the parents he couldn't remember. And the future that seemed impossibly uncertain. The boats bumped against the shore, and Harry scrambled out, his feet sinking slightly into the muddy bank. The other first years were doing the same, their voices rising in excitement and nervous chatter. Hagrid led them up the stone steps toward the great oak doors, which swung open to reveal a dimly lit entrance hall. Harry stepped inside, and his breath caught in his throat. The ceiling was so high it seemed to stretch into infinity, torches flickering along the walls and illuminating portraits of ancient wizards and witches who seemed to watch his every move. A marble staircase swept upward into darkness, and everywhere he looked, there were doors and corridors and secrets waiting to be discovered. "Welcome to Hogwarts," Hagrid rumbled, and his voice echoed off the stone walls. "The sorting's about to begin. Follow me." They walked through the entrance hall and into a smaller chamber, where a stern-faced witch in emerald robes was waiting for them. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her expression suggested that she had no patience for nonsense. "Welcome to Hogwarts," she said, her voice crisp and businesslike. "I am Professor McGonagall. The sorting ceremony will begin shortly. You will wait here until you are called. Please remain quiet and try not to touch anything." She swept out of the room, leaving the first years in a state of hushed anticipation. "Is that Professor McGonagall?" Hermione whispered, her eyes shining with excitement. "I've read about her. She's the head of Gryffindor House. She can turn into a cat, you know. A tabby cat with markings around her eyes just like her glasses. It's fascinating." Ron looked like he wanted to say something sarcastic, but a faint rustling from the other side of the door caught his attention. "Listen," he said, his voice barely audible. "The ghosts. They're coming." Harry pressed his ear to the wooden door and heard, very faintly, the murmur of voices. Not living voices, something older, something thinner, like the sound of wind through dead leaves. "Ghosts," he breathed. "Real ghosts." "Of course," Hermione said, as if this was obvious. "Hogwarts is the most haunted castle in Britain. There are nearly 100 ghosts in residence, including the ghost of Gryffindor Tower and the Bloody Baron, who's supposed to be absolutely terrifying. I read all about it in the history of haunted homes." The door swung open, and Professor McGonagall stood on the other side, her expression still stern but with a hint of warmth that Harry hadn't noticed before. "Follow me," she said, and they stepped into the great hall. The sight was overwhelming. The ceiling was enchanted to look like the night sky, complete with stars that twinkled and drifted as if alive. Candles floated in midair, their flames casting a warm, golden glow over the 4 long tables that lined the hall. Each table was filled with students, all of them watching the newcomers with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. But it was the sorting hat that drew Harry's attention. It sat on a stool in front of the staff table, its ancient fabric wrinkled and worn, its brim turned up as if in perpetual surprise. A rip near the brim formed a sort of mouth, and Harry could have sworn it was smiling. "Welcome to Hogwarts," Professor McGonagall announced. "Before the feast begins, you will be sorted into your houses. The ceremony is very important, for your house will be your family here at Hogwarts. You will share your dormitory and your classes with your fellow house members, and you will be judged on your house's performance throughout the year. If you win the House Cup, you will receive the honor and glory of being the best house in the school." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the assembled first years. "I will call your names in alphabetical order. When I call your name, you will come to the front of the hall, sit on the stool, and place the sorting hat on your head. The hat will decide which house you belong to. Please do not try to influence the hat's decision. It has been doing this for over 1,000 years, and it knows what it's doing." Harry felt his heart skip a beat. Alphabetical order. His last name began with P. He'd have to wait a while, which gave him time to dread what was coming. Hermione Granger. Hermione walked to the front of the hall with a confidence that Harry deeply envied. She sat on the stool and placed the hat on her head, her expression determined. The hat was silent for a moment, and then it spoke, "Gryffindor." A burst of applause erupted from the table on the far right, and Hermione beamed with satisfaction as she made her way to join them. Draco Malfoy. A pale, pointed boy with silver blonde hair strode to the front of the hall. Harry recognized him from the robe shop at Diagon Alley, the boy who'd sneered at Ron and called his family traitors. The hat had barely touched his head before it shouted, "Slytherin." Draco smirked as he made his way to the table on the far left, where a group of students in green and silver were applauding him with forced enthusiasm. Neville Longbottom. Neville stumbled forward, his face pale with terror. He sat on the stool, his eyes darting around the hall as if looking for an escape. The hat pondered for a long moment, longer than it had with Hermione or Draco, and then it announced, Gryffindor. Neville's face flooded with relief as he scrambled to join his new house. Harry felt a surge of warmth for the boy. He'd been so brave, even when he'd clearly been terrified. And he'd been placed in Gryffindor, the house of the brave. It was perfect. Harry Potter. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned toward him, and Harry felt the weight of their stares like a physical blow. He moved on autopilot, his legs carrying him forward without conscious thought. He sat on the stool, his hands gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles went white. Professor McGonagall placed the hat on his head. And the hat spoke in his mind. Ah, it said, its voice thoughtful and ancient. Harry Potter. I was wondering when you'd arrive. You're a tricky one, aren't you? Lots of courage, yes, that's obvious. And you're not without ambition. You've got a clever mind, too, though you don't always use it. And loyalty, oh, yes, you've got loyalty in spades. The question is, where to put you? Not Slytherin, Harry thought desperately. Please, not Slytherin. Not Slytherin. The hat's voice was amused. A bit of a prejudice, isn't it? Slytherin's not all bad, you know. Salazar Slytherin was a great wizard. Cunning, powerful, ambitious, much like you, actually. I'm not like them, Harry thought. I'm not like Voldemort. I'm not. Ah, the hat said, and there was something different in its tone now. Something curious. That's interesting. Very interesting indeed. You speak the language, do you? Without even knowing it. The blood runs deep in you, Harry Potter. Deeper than you could possibly imagine. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? The hat was silent for a moment, and when it spoke again, its voice was tinged with something that might have been awe. The Parseltongue. It runs through you like water through stone. Ancient. Powerful. The blood of the founders themselves. I don't understand. You will, the hat said. Soon. But not yet. First, you must be sorted. And I think I know exactly where you belong. Not Slytherin. All your life, you've been told who you are. But you're more than you think you are, Harry Potter. Much more. And I suspect that in the end, you will be the one to decide what that means. The hat fell silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was firm and certain. Gryffindor. The hall erupted in cheers. Ron whooped so loudly Harry could hear him over the rest of the crowd. And then the hat was lifted off his head, and Harry was stumbling toward the Gryffindor table, his heart pounding so hard he could barely hear. But as he sat down, surrounded by the warmth of his new house, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something important. The hat had spoken of ancient blood and snake languages and the blood of the founders themselves. It had spoken of things Harry didn't understand. And somewhere in his mind, he realized that this was only the beginning. The feast was a blur of food and noise and laughter. Harry ate until he was full, then ate some more, because the food was so good and so plentiful that it felt almost obscene to waste it. Ron ate like he'd been starving for days, his face smeared with gravy and his expression one of pure bliss. This is brilliant, Ron said through a mouthful of chicken. Mom never lets us have more than 2 helpings at home. Says it's bad for the digestion. Harry laughed, the sound surprising him. He hadn't laughed like this in years. Hadn't felt like this in years. Surrounded by people who actually wanted him there, who didn't look at him like he was a burden or a freak. You all right, Harry? Ron asked, noticing his expression. You look. I don't know. Sort of sad. But happy at the same time. I'm fine, Harry said, and this time he meant it. Really? Just, taking it all in. Ron nodded sagely. Yeah, I get that. It's a lot. But don't worry, we're Gryffindors now. We're part of the best house in the school. Everyone says so. Well, everyone except the Slytherins. But they don't count. Harry glanced over at the Slytherin table, where Draco Malfoy was sitting with a group of older students. They were all wearing silver and green, their expressions smug and superior. Draco caught Harry's eye and smirked, and Harry felt something cold snake through his chest. What did the hat mean? He wondered. About the Parseltongue? About the blood of the founders? The Sorting Hat's words echoed in his mind, the Parseltongue. It runs through you like water through stone. But he couldn't speak Parseltongue. That was impossible. That was something only dark wizards could do. Salazar Slytherin's legacy. The language of snakes. Except, hadn't he heard something, once? In the zoo. A hissing voice that sounded like words, even though it couldn't have been. Harry pushed the thought away. He was tired and overwhelmed and probably imagining things. Tomorrow, classes would start, and everything would make sense. It had to make sense. He'd finally found a place where he belonged, and he wasn't going to let some cryptic Sorting Hat ruin it for him. But even as he made himself think that, Harry knew the truth. Something had changed tonight. Something had awakened inside him. Something that might change everything he thought he knew about himself. After the feast, the prefects led them to their common rooms. The Gryffindor common room was a warm, welcoming space filled with squashy armchairs and a crackling fire. The walls were hung with portraits of previous Gryffindors, and the window looked out over the dark grounds toward the Forbidden Forest. Harry found himself sitting in one of the armchairs, staring into the fire and trying to make sense of the last few hours. Ron had already gone to bed, too exhausted from the excitement of the day to stay awake any longer. But Harry couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the Hat's words echoing in his mind. Harry. He looked up to find Neville Longbottom standing in front of him, his expression hesitant. Can I sit with you? Neville asked. I can't sleep either. Harry nodded, and Neville settled into the chair across from him. Tonight was brilliant, Neville said softly. I never thought I'd be sorted into Gryffindor. My gran always said I was more of a Hufflepuff. She said I didn't have the courage for Gryffindor. You were brave tonight, Harry said. You stood up to the Hat. That takes courage. Neville smiled, a shy, grateful expression that made him look younger. Then he was. Thanks. That means a lot, coming from you. Harry didn't know what to say to that. He didn't feel like someone whose words should mean anything to anyone. He was just Harry. The boy with the scar. The boy who didn't even know who he really was. Did you see the Sorting Hat's expression when it was on your head? Neville asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. It looked, surprised. Like it had found something it wasn't expecting. Harry's blood ran cold. What do you mean? I don't know. Neville shrugged, looking uncomfortable. It just looked strange. Like it had seen something and couldn't quite believe it. Maybe it was just my imagination. Or maybe it wasn't, Harry thought. Maybe the Hat really did see something. Something ancient. Something I don't understand. I'm going to go to bed, he said, standing abruptly. It's been a long day. Neville nodded, looking relieved at the excuse to end the conversation. Good night, Harry. I'll see you tomorrow. Harry climbed the stairs to his dormitory, his mind whirling with questions. He changed into his pajamas and climbed into bed, the curtains around his four-poster bed blocking out the light from the other beds. He lay there for a long time, staring at the canopy above him and trying to make sense of it all. The Sorting Hat's words echoed in his mind, over and over, like a song he couldn't forget. The blood runs deep in you, Harry Potter. Deeper than you could possibly imagine. You speak the language, do you? Without even knowing it. The Parseltongue. It runs through you like water through stone. And then, very faintly, as if from a great distance, Harry heard something. A hissing whisper. A voice that wasn't quite a voice, speaking words that weren't quite words. Come to me, it said. Come to me, heir of Slytherin. I have been waiting for you. Harry sat bolt upright in bed, his heart pounding. The voice was gone now, vanished as quickly as it had come. But the words lingered. In his mind, heavy with meaning he couldn't fully grasp. Heir of Slytherin. The words echoed in his head like a death knell. But he wasn't the heir of Slytherin. He couldn't be. He'd been sorted into Gryffindor. He was Harry Potter, the boy who lived. The boy who defeated the Dark Lord. But the Parseltongue, a treacherous voice whispered in his mind. The Parseltongue runs through you like water through stone. And the voice called you heir of Slytherin. What if the hat was right? What if there's something inside you that you don't understand? Harry lay back down, his body trembling with a cold dread that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. He tried to push the thoughts away, to focus on the excitement of the day, the wonder of the castle, the warmth of his new friends. But as sleep finally claimed him, the hissing voice echoed in his dreams, speaking words that were both promise and warning. Come to me, it said. Come to me, heir of Slytherin. I have been waiting for you. And somewhere deep beneath the castle, in a darkness that had not been disturbed for centuries, an ancient enchantment stirred to life. Salazar Slytherin's magic, preserved through the ages, sensed the presence of the one who carried his blood. And as Harry Potter slept, that magic began to wake. The next morning, Harry woke with a start, his heart pounding from a dream he couldn't quite remember. Something about snakes. Something about the dark. Something about a voice that called him by a name he didn't want to bear. He shook his head, trying to clear the cobwebs from his mind. It was just a dream. It had to be a dream. There was no way any of it was real. But as he got dressed and made his way down to the Great Hall for breakfast, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The other students were talking and laughing, their voices filling the hall with a comfortable buzz. Ron was already at the Gryffindor table, his plate piled high with bacon and eggs. Morning, Harry, Ron said, grinning. You look like you didn't sleep well. Bad dreams? Something like that, Harry said, sliding onto the bench beside him. Don't worry about it, Ron said, waving his fork dismissively. Everyone has weird dreams during their first week. It's all the new magic and stuff. Mom always says it takes a while for your magical core to adjust to being in a new place. Harry nodded, accepting this explanation even though he didn't quite believe it. It was more comforting than the alternative, that the Sorting Hat had been right, that there was something ancient and dark awakening inside him. The day passed in a blur of classes and new faces. They had Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall, who turned her desk into a pig and back again, which was apparently the easiest thing in the world, though Harry couldn't see how. They had Charms with Professor Flitwick, who was so short he had to stand on a stack of books to see over his lectern. They had Potions with Professor Snape, who seemed to hate Harry on sight and made his opinion abundantly clear through a series of pointed questions and cruel remarks. By the time the day was over, Harry was exhausted. His head was spinning with information, incantations, wand movements, potion ingredients, astronomical charts. It was all so much, so overwhelming, and yet so utterly wonderful. You all right there, mate? Ron asked as they walked back to the Gryffindor common room. You look like you've been hit by a bludger. Just tired, Harry said. And a bit confused. Snape's got it in for me, hasn't he? Ron snorted. He's got it in for everyone. Don't take it personally. My brother Bill says Snape's been like that since he was a student. Always lurking in corners and looking like someone's stolen his favorite potion. Harry laughed, the sound surprising him. That's a good description. Yeah, well, Bill's got a way with words. Ron paused, his expression turning serious. Listen. Harry, I wanted to ask you something. About the sorting ceremony. Did the hat say anything weird to you? It looked like it was talking to you for a really long time. Harry felt his stomach clench. It didn't say anything important. Just talked about houses and stuff. Ron looked at him for a moment, his eyes searching. Right. Of course. Just, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here. We're mates, aren't we? Yeah, Harry said, and he was surprised by how much he meant it. "We're mates." That night, Harry dreamed again. He was in the great hall, but it was empty, the tables gone, the candles extinguished, the enchanted ceiling dark and cold. The Sorting Hat sat alone on its stool, its fabric wrinkled and worn, its brim turned up as if in perpetual surprise. "Ah, Harry Potter," the hat said, and its voice echoed off the stone walls. "You've come back." "I don't know how I got here," Harry said. "I don't even know if this is real." "Real is a relative term," the hat said. "What matters is what you choose to do with what you learn." "What did you mean?" Harry asked, his voice rising with desperation. "What did you mean about the Parseltongue? About the blood of the founders?" The hat was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer, almost sad. "Your mother's family was descended from Salazar Slytherin," it said. "The blood runs through you, Harry. Not through your father, he was pure Gryffindor, through and through. But your mother, her mother's mother's mother, the blood is diluted, yes, but it's there. Stronger than you know." "I can't be descended from Slytherin," Harry said, his voice barely a whisper. "That's impossible. Voldemort was Slytherin's heir. He's the one who killed your parents," the hat finished. "Yes. He was the heir by choice. But you are the heir by blood. And that blood, Harry, is ancient and powerful. It awakened the first time you spoke Parseltongue, even without knowing it. And now it's awake, and it will not be silenced." "No," Harry said, shaking his head. "No, I don't want this. I don't want to be Slytherin's heir. I don't want to be anything like him." "Then you must choose," the hat said. "The blood does not control you. It only offers power. What you do with that power is up to you. But the voice is calling you, Harry. It's been calling since the moment you arrived at Hogwarts. And if you don't answer, it will find another way to reach you." "What voice?" Harry asked. "I don't hear anything." "Listen," the hat said. "Really listen." And then Harry heard it, the hissing whisper from last night, faint but unmistakable. "Come to me," it said. "Come to me, heir of Slytherin. I have been waiting for you." Harry woke with a gasp, sitting upright in bed. The darkness of the dormitory was absolute, the other boys sleeping peacefully in their beds. But Harry couldn't sleep. He couldn't even close his eyes without hearing that voice. "Come to me, heir of Slytherin." He threw off his covers and padded to the window, staring out at the dark grounds below. The forbidden forest loomed in the distance, its trees black against the moonlit sky. Somewhere out there, something was calling him. But what? And why? And why did he feel, deep in his bones, that he had to answer? The next day was Saturday, and the common room was buzzing with activity. Students were playing chess and reading books and discussing their plans for the weekend. Harry sat in one of the armchairs by the fire, trying to ignore the voice that kept whispering in the back of his mind. "Harry! Harry!" He looked up to find Hermione standing in front of him, her expression concerned. "I've been calling your name for ages," she said. "Are you all right? You look terrible." "I'm fine," Harry said, the words automatic. "Just tired." Hermione didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. "Well, I was wondering if you'd like to come to the library with me. I want to look up something about the Sorting Hat. I've been reading about its history, and there's something I can't quite figure out." "What about the Sorting Hat?" Harry asked, his heart racing. "Just something I noticed during the ceremony," Hermione said. "The way it spoke to you, it seemed to take longer than normal. And the hat's expression was strange. I've read that the hat sometimes reveals secrets about a person's heritage. I was wondering if maybe—" "I don't want to talk about it," Harry said, and his voice came out harsher than he'd intended. Hermione recoiled slightly, her eyes widening. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. I just thought—" "It's fine," Harry said, forcing himself to calm down. "I'm just tired. Maybe another time." Hermione nodded, looking hurt but determined not to show it. Of course. Another time. She walked away, and Harry felt a pang of guilt. She'd only been trying to help. But he couldn't tell her the truth. He couldn't tell anyone. How could he explain that he was hearing voices? That he might be descended from the founder of Slytherin House? That the Sorting Hat had seen something inside him that he didn't even understand himself? He needed answers. But he didn't know where to find them. And then he remembered the voice. The hissing whisper that had called to him from the depths of the castle. Come to me, heir of Slytherin. What if the answer was waiting for him down there? What if the voice was leading him to something that would explain everything? It was a stupid idea. Foolish. Reckless. But as Harry sat in the common room, watching his friends laugh and talk and live their lives, he realized he didn't have any other choice. He had to find out what was calling him. He had to know what he truly was. And so, that night, when the castle was dark and quiet, Harry crept out of the Gryffindor common room and made his way down into the dungeons. The corridors were empty, the portraits watching him with curious eyes. He moved quickly, silently, his footsteps echoing on the cold stone. The hissing voice grew louder as he descended, leading him deeper and deeper into the darkness. Come to me, heir of Slytherin. I have been waiting for you. And then, at the end of a long, narrow corridor, Harry found it. A door. Ancient and ornate, covered in swirling designs that looked like serpents coiled together in an endless dance. In the center of the door was a carving of a massive snake, its jaws open wide, its eyes glittering with the faintest hint of magic. Harry reached out to touch the door, and the snake's eyes flickered to life. It turned its head to look at him, its tongue flickering in and out. And then it spoke, in a voice that was both his and not his, a voice that echoed with the ancient magic of Salazar Slytherin himself. Speak the language of my blood, the snake hissed. And the way shall be open to you. Harry stared at the snake, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to speak the language of the serpents. But then the words came to him, not from his mind, but from somewhere deeper. From the blood that ran through his veins, ancient and powerful, waiting to be awakened. He opened his mouth, and the hissing words emerged. The words of Parseltongue. The language of the serpents. Open, he said. Open to me, who is heir to your master's legacy. The snake's eyes flashed. The door swung open, revealing a darkness that seemed to swallow all light. And in the darkness, a voice whispered. Welcome, heir of Slytherin. I have been waiting for you. Harry stepped through the door. And the darkness closed behind him. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, The Founder's Judgment. The darkness was not empty. Harry felt at the moment the door swung shut behind him, a presence in the shadows, ancient and watchful, like the weight of 1,000 years pressing down on his shoulders. The air was cold and still, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and something else, something metallic and old that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He stood frozen, his hand still raised from touching the door, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The hissing voice that had guided him here was silent now, replaced by a deeper silence that felt almost alive. It pressed against his ears, his skin, his very bones, as if the darkness itself was examining him, testing him, judging whether he was worthy. I shouldn't be here, he thought, and the words echoed in his mind with a desperate clarity. I should go back. I should wake up. This has to be a dream. But it wasn't a dream. The cold stone beneath his feet was real. The weight of the silence was real. And the presence in the darkness, that, too, was real, watching him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Harry took a step forward, his foot landing on something that crunched softly beneath his shoe. He looked down and saw, faintly illuminated by the dim light filtering through the door behind him, a scatter of bones. Small bones, delicate bones, the bones of rats, or perhaps birds, or maybe something else entirely. He swallowed hard and kept moving. The corridor stretched ahead of him, narrow and winding, its walls covered in ancient carvings that seemed to writhe in the darkness. Serpents coiled and twisted in endless patterns, their stone eyes glinting with a faint, malicious light. Harry kept his gaze fixed forward, refusing to look too closely at the carvings. He had the unsettling feeling that if he stared at them for too long, they might move. "Hello?" he called out, and his voice echoed off the walls, distorted and strange. "Is anyone there?" No answer. Just the silence, pressing in on him from all sides. He walked for what felt like hours, though it could only have been minutes. The corridor twisted and turned, descending deeper and deeper into the earth. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, until Harry could barely see his own hand in front of his face. And then, suddenly, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. Harry stopped at the entrance, his breath catching in his throat. The chamber was enormous, larger than the Great Hall, larger than anything he'd ever seen. Its ceiling was lost in shadow, its walls covered in more serpent carvings that seemed to glow with a faint, greenish light. The floor was smooth stone, polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the eerie glow of the torches that lined the walls. But it was the statue that drew his attention. In the center of the chamber stood a massive figure carved from dark stone, a wizard, ancient and stern, with a long beard and robes that seemed to flow like water. His face was weathered and wise, his eyes closed in eternal contemplation. In one hand, he held a staff topped with a serpent's head, in the other, a book bound in what looked like snake skin. And at the base of the statue, carved into the stone floor, were words in a language Harry couldn't read. But he could understand them. "Here lies Salazar Slytherin, founder of Hogwarts, guardian of the ancient ways. Let those who come before him prove their worth, or be consumed by the darkness they seek to claim." Harry stared at the words, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure the whole chamber could hear it. Salazar Slytherin. The founder himself. The wizard who had built this castle, who had created the Chamber of Secrets, who had been so determined to keep Muggleborns out of Hogwarts that he'd left behind a monster to destroy them. And Harry was standing in his chamber, called here by his blood, claimed by his magic. "I don't want this," Harry whispered, and his voice cracked with desperation. "I don't want to be your heir. I don't want any of this." The statue's eyes opened. Harry stumbled backward, his heart leaping into his throat. The statue's eyes were glowing, two pinpricks of green light that burned like emeralds in the darkness. They fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel like he was being stripped bare, every secret and fear laid open for inspection. "You are here," a voice said, and it came from everywhere and nowhere, from the stone walls and the darkness and the depths of Harry's own mind. "You have spoken the language of my blood. You have crossed the threshold of my legacy. And now you must face my judgment." Harry tried to speak, but his voice had deserted him. He stood frozen, staring up at the statue, his entire body trembling with a fear he couldn't control. "Do not fear," the voice said, and there was something almost gentle in it now. "I am not your enemy. I am the one who called you here. I am the one who has been waiting for you, heir of Slytherin, through all the long years of my absence. What do you want from me?" Harry managed, his voice barely a whisper. The statue's eyes glowed brighter. "I want to see what you are," it said. "I want to know if you are worthy of the legacy I left behind. The blood of my blood has walked these halls before, but none have been worthy. None have understood. But you are different, heir. I can feel it in the magic that courses through your veins. There is something in you that the others lacked." "What?" Harry asked, his voice rising with desperation. "What is it?" "Hope," the voice said. "You carry hope, heir. It burns within you like a flame in the darkness. The others who came before, they were consumed by ambition, by greed, by the desire for power. But you seek something else. You seek belonging. You seek truth. And that, heir of Slytherin, is the rarest magic of all." Harry didn't know what to say to that. He didn't feel hopeful. He felt terrified and confused and utterly lost. But he couldn't deny the truth of the voice's words. He did want to belong. He did want to know who he really was. "I will show you the truth," the voice said. "I will show you the legacy I left behind. But first, you must prove yourself worthy. You must face the judgment of the founder. The ground beneath Harry's feet began to shift. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the statue's base, as the stone floor split open to reveal a staircase spiraling downward into even deeper darkness. Descend, the voice said. Face the trials I have set for you. Prove that you are worthy of my blood. And when you emerge, you will know the truth of who you are. Harry stared at the staircase, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't want to descend. He wanted to run, to escape, to find his way back to the Gryffindor common room and pretend that none of this had ever happened. But the voice was calling to him, and the blood in his veins was answering. Descend, the voice said again. I have been waiting for you, Heir. Do not keep me waiting any longer. Harry took a deep breath and stepped onto the staircase. The descent seemed to take forever. The staircase spiraled down and down, past walls covered in more serpent carvings, past torches that flickered with green flame, past doorways that led into darkness. Harry kept his hand on the wall for balance, his legs trembling with exhaustion and fear. And then, at last, the staircase ended. Harry found himself in a small chamber, circular and bare, with only a single object in its center. An ancient-looking pedestal, carved from the same dark stone as the statue above, and on the pedestal, a book. Your first trial, the voice said, and it came from the shadows around him. You must read the book. You must understand what it contains. And you must decide if you are worthy of the knowledge it holds. Harry approached the pedestal slowly, his hand reaching out to touch the book's cover. It was warm to the touch, vibrating with a faint hum of magic. The cover was made of something soft and leathery, snake skin, he realized with a shudder, and it was embossed with the image of a serpent coiled around a wand. He opened the book, and the words seemed to leap off the page. They were in Parseltongue, the language of serpents, but Harry could understand them perfectly. They spoke of ancient magic, of the founding of Hogwarts, of Salazar Slytherin's vision for a world where wizards would be free to pursue their full potential without fear of persecution. I am not the monster the histories claim, the book said. I am not the one who sought to destroy Muggleborns. I sought to protect our kind. To preserve the magic that was being lost to fear and ignorance. The Muggles hunted us. They burned our families. They drowned our children. I sought to build a place where we could be safe, where we could learn, where we could grow strong. Harry read on, his eyes scanning the words with growing fascination. The book spoke of the founding of Hogwarts, of the 4 founders and their shared vision. It spoke of the gifts each founder brought to the school, Godric Gryffindor's courage, Rowena Ravenclaw's wisdom, Helga Hufflepuff's loyalty, and Salazar Slytherin's ambition. But it also spoke of the growing rift between the founders. Slytherin had believed that only pure-blood wizards should be admitted to Hogwarts, that Muggleborns were a threat to the magical community. The other founders had disagreed, and the argument had grown so bitter that Slytherin had left the school he'd helped build. I did not leave in anger, the book said. I left in sorrow. I could not stand by and watch the school I loved be corrupted by those who would destroy it from within. But I did not abandon it entirely. I left behind my legacy, my teachings, my magic. And I left behind the Chamber of Secrets, where my true heirs could find the knowledge I had preserved. Harry closed the book, his mind reeling. This wasn't the Salazar Slytherin he'd read about. This wasn't the cruel, manipulative wizard who'd hated Muggleborns and left a monster to destroy them. This was something else entirely. Something more complex. Something almost sympathetic. Do you understand now? The voice asked. Do you see the truth I have been trying to show you? I don't know, Harry said honestly. It doesn't match what I've been told. All my life, I've heard that Slytherin was evil. That he wanted to hurt people. That he was the worst of the founders. History is written by the victors, the voice said. My enemies have cast me as a villain. But I am not a villain, Heir. I am simply a wizard who sought to protect his people. The same as you. The same as your parents. The same as all those who fight against the darkness. Harry felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. The voice was speaking of his parents, and it seemed to know them. To understand them. You knew my parents? He asked, his voice cracking. I know the blood, the voice said. Your mother's line descends from me. Not through a direct line, but through the branches of my family tree. Your parents were good people, Heir. They fought for the light. They died for the light. And they would have been proud of what you are becoming. Harry didn't know what to say. The tears were falling now, streaming down his cheeks as the weight of the words hit him. His parents. They'd been good people. They'd died for the light. And they would have been proud of him. Your next trial, the voice said. You must claim your birthright. You must accept what you are. Another door opened in the wall of the chamber, revealing a narrow passageway lined with torches. Harry wiped his eyes and stepped through, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The passage led to another chamber, larger than the first. In the center of this chamber stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal rested a wand. But it was not an ordinary wand. It was long and slender, made of a dark wood that seemed to absorb the light, with a core that glowed with a faint green luminescence. The handle was carved into the shape of a serpent, its eyes two tiny emeralds that glittered in the darkness. This wand was mine, the voice said, and there was a note of sadness in it now. It was forged for me by the greatest wand-maker of my time. It contains a core of basilisk venom, tempered with the feather of a phoenix. It is one of the most powerful wands in existence. And it has been waiting for the one who is worthy of it. Harry stared at the wand. He could feel its power, pulsing like a heartbeat, calling to him. It was like the Sorting Hat all over again, a sense of connection, of destiny, of something ancient and profound. I already have a wand, he said. It chose me. At Ollivanders. The wand from Ollivanders was a good start, the voice said. But it is not your true wand. It is not the wand that will carry you through the battles to come. This wand, Heir, this wand is your birthright. Take it. Claim it. And you will never be powerless again. Harry's hand hovered over the wand. He could feel the warmth of it, the hum of its magic, the way it seemed to reach out to him like a living thing. And yet he hesitated. I don't want to be Slytherin's heir, he said. I don't want to be connected to the dark magic of this place. I just want to be Harry. Just Harry. You cannot run from who you are, the voice said. You can only choose what you will become. The wand does not make you evil. It is a tool, nothing more. What you do with it is up to you. Harry's hand closed around the wand. And the world exploded into light. He was somewhere else. Somewhere outside the chamber. Somewhere he'd never been before. He was standing in a great hall, surrounded by thousands of people. Wizards and witches, young and old, their faces lifted toward him with a mix of awe and hope. At the front of the crowd stood his parents, alive and whole, their eyes shining with pride. Harry, his mother said. My brave, brave boy. Dad, Harry breathed. Mum. You're here. You're. Always. His father said. We're always with you. Even when you can't see us. Harry felt tears streaming down his face. He wanted to run to them, to throw his arms around them, to never let them go. But he was rooted to the spot, unable to move. You are so much more than you realize, his mother said. You carry the legacy of the founders within you. Not just Slytherin, but all of them. Gryffindor's courage. Ravenclaw's wisdom. Hufflepuff's loyalty. And Slytherin's ambition. You are the embodiment of all that Hogwarts was meant to be. I don't understand, Harry said. I'm just Harry. I'm not special. I'm not. You are the most special person in this world, his father said. And not because of a prophecy or a scar or a destiny written in the stars. You are special because you choose to do good. Because you choose to fight for what's right. Because you choose to love, even when love is the hardest thing to do. Harry woke with a gasp. He was back in the chamber, lying on the cold stone floor. The wand was still in his hand, its warmth pulsing against his palm. But he wasn't alone anymore. In the center of the chamber stood a figure of shimmering light, an old wizard with a long beard and robes that seemed to flow like water. His face was weathered and wise, his eyes warm with an ancient kindness. "Salazar Slytherin," Harry breathed. The figure inclined its head. "In a sense. I am a memory, Harry. A fragment of the founder's soul, preserved in magic to guide his true heir. And you, Harry Potter, are his true heir. Not because of your blood alone, but because of your heart." Harry scrambled to his feet, his mind reeling. "I don't understand. The Sorting Hat, it said I could be Slytherin. It said the blood runs deep in me. But I don't want to be Slytherin. I don't want to be the heir of someone who tried to destroy Muggleborns." The figure smiled, and it was a gentle smile, full of sorrow and regret. "You have been taught a false history, heir. I did not seek to destroy Muggleborns. I sought to protect my people from those who would destroy them. The Muggles hunted us for centuries. They burned our families. They drowned our children. I built this school to protect us, to preserve our magic. And I left behind my legacy so that one day, a true heir would rise to carry on that protection." "But the Chamber of Secrets," Harry said. "The basilisk. It was supposed to kill Muggleborns." The figure's expression darkened. "The basilisk was never meant to be a weapon. It was meant to be a guardian. A protector of the school. Voldemort twisted my legacy, corrupted it to serve his own dark purposes. The basilisk was not meant to kill. It was meant to defend." Harry stared at the figure, his mind struggling to make sense of the words. Everything he'd been taught about Salazar Slytherin was wrong. Everything he believed about the Chamber of Secrets was a lie. "The truth is more complicated than the histories would have you believe," the figure said. "I was not a perfect wizard. I made mistakes. I was arrogant, foolish, stubborn. But I was not evil. I was simply a man who wanted to protect his people. And that is what I want you to understand, Harry. You are not defined by your blood or your legacy. You are defined by your choices. Your actions. Your heart." Harry felt tears prick at his eyes again. "What am I supposed to do?" The figure stepped closer, its shimmering form bending down to meet Harry's gaze. "You must restore the true legacy of Slytherin. You must show the world that the Founder's teachings were not about hatred or prejudice. They were about protection, preservation, and the pursuit of knowledge. You must become the heir that I should have been. The heir that I always hoped would come." "How?" Harry asked, his voice breaking. "How can I do that when everyone hates Slytherin? When everyone thinks the Founder was evil?" "By being yourself," the figure said. "By showing the world that you are not what they expect. By proving that the blood of Slytherin can be used for good. And by remembering that you are never alone, Harry. Your friends, your family, your allies, they are all part of your strength. Do not forget that." Harry nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I won't forget. I promise." The figure smiled. "Then take the wand. Take the books. Take the knowledge I have left for you. And use them to become the wizard you were always meant to be." The figure began to fade, its light growing dimmer and dimmer. "Wait!" Harry called out. "Please, I need to know more. I need to know how to fight Voldemort. I need to know how to save the people I love." The figure paused, its light flickering weakly. "You already know how, Harry. You have known your whole life. Fight for what is right. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. And never, ever give up hope. That is the true legacy of the Founders. And it is the legacy you must carry forward." The figure vanished, leaving Harry alone in the chamber, the wand still warm in his hand. Harry didn't know how long he stayed there, kneeling on the cold stone floor of the chamber, the ancient wand clutched in his trembling fingers. Time seemed to lose all meaning in this place. Hours could have passed, or only minutes, and he wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Eventually, he forced himself to stand. His legs were shaking, his entire body exhausted beyond measure. But he couldn't stay here. He had to get back to the castle, back to his friends, back to the life he'd been building before this strange and terrifying night began. He gathered the things he'd found, the wand, the books, a small box that contained a ring with a serpent's head carved into its surface. He slipped them into his robes, feeling their weight against his chest, and made his way back through the winding corridors and up the spiral staircase. The journey seemed shorter this time, as if the chamber was eager to release him. Or perhaps he was simply too tired to notice the passage of time. By the time he reached the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, the sky was lightening with the first hints of dawn. He slipped out of the chamber, pausing only to close the door behind him. The snake's eyes flickered briefly, acknowledging him, and then faded back into stone. Harry made his way through the deserted corridors of Hogwarts, his steps silent on the cold stone. The portraits watched him, their painted eyes curious, but none of them spoke. They seemed to sense, perhaps, that this was a moment that required silence. He reached the Gryffindor common room and slipped through the portrait hole, collapsing into one of the armchairs by the fireplace. The fire had burned low, only a few embers remaining to cast their faint, orange glow across the room. Harry sat there for a long time, staring into the dying flames and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Salazar Slytherin had spoken to him. The founder himself had appeared as a ghostly figure and told him that he was the true heir. Not just because of his blood, but because of his heart. Because he was good. Because he was brave. Because he was everything that the founder had hoped his legacy would become. Harry pulled the wand from his robes, examining it in the faint firelight. It was beautiful in a terrible sort of way, sleek and dark, with a coiled serpent for a handle and a core that pulsed with a faint, green light. He could feel its power, humming against his palm, eager to be used. "I don't know how to use you," he whispered. "I don't know if I want to." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. He did want to use the wand. He did want to learn the magic that Slytherin had left behind. He wanted to become powerful enough to protect the people he loved, to fight the darkness that was coming, to be the hero that everyone expected him to be. And yet, there was a part of him that was afraid. Afraid of what he might become. Afraid of the power that flowed through his veins, the blood of a founder who had been reviled for centuries. Afraid that he might turn into something he didn't recognize. "You are not defined by your blood or your legacy," Slytherin's voice echoed in his mind. "You are defined by your choices. Your actions. Your heart." Harry looked down at the wand in his hand, and he made a decision. He would learn the magic. He would embrace the legacy. But he would never forget who he was. He would never lose sight of the things that mattered, his friends, his courage, his determination to do what was right. He would become the heir that Slytherin had always hoped for. The heir who would restore the founder's true legacy, not the twisted version that Voldemort had perverted. He would become the wizard he was always meant to be. Dawn was breaking over the grounds of Hogwarts when Harry finally made his way up to his dormitory. The other boys were still asleep, their curtains drawn around their beds, the soft sounds of their breathing filling the room. Harry slipped into his own bed, hiding the wand and the books and the ring beneath his pillow. He lay on his back, staring at the canopy above him, his mind still spinning with everything he'd learned. The blood of Slytherin ran through his veins. The wand of the founder was in his hand. And somewhere beneath the castle, the Chamber of Secrets was waiting for him to return. But more than all of that, Harry knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was not Voldemort's heir. He was not the dark wizard that everyone feared. He was Harry Potter, the boy who lived, and he was going to use his legacy to fight for the light. He fell asleep with the wand clutched against his chest, Slytherin's words echoing in his dreams. "You are not defined by your blood or your legacy. You are defined by your choices. Your actions. Your heart." Harry woke late the next morning, sunlight streaming through the windows of the dormitory. The other boys were already gone. Ron had apparently left a note on his bedside table, scrawled in his messy handwriting, "Went to breakfast. Didn't want to wake you. You looked like you needed to sleep. Ron." Harry smiled, folding the note and tucking it into his pocket. Ron was a good friend. The best friend he'd ever had. He dressed quickly, hiding the wand and the books and the ring in the bottom of his trunk, covered by his robes and textbooks. He didn't want anyone to find them, not yet. He needed to understand them first, to learn their secrets before he shared them with anyone. The great hall was nearly empty by the time he arrived, only a few students lingering over their breakfast. Ron was at the Gryffindor table, waving him over with an enthusiastic gesture. "Morning, Harry," Ron said, pushing a plate of toast toward him. "You look a lot better than you did yesterday. Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," Harry said, grabbing a piece of toast. "Really well. I think I was just exhausted from all the excitement." Ron nodded sagely. "Yeah, the first week is always like that. My brother Charlie said it took him almost a month to get used to all the magic. Said he kept waking up in the middle of the night thinking the portraits were talking to him." Harry laughed, the sound surprising him. "That's a bit dramatic." "You don't know Charlie," Ron said, grinning. "He's the most dramatic person I know, and I've got Fred and George for brothers." Harry ate his breakfast, listening to Ron's chatter about classes and Quidditch and the strange smells coming from the potions dungeon. It was normal. Comforting. A reminder that the world was still spinning, even after everything that had happened. But underneath the comfort, Harry felt a new weight settling on his shoulders. The weight of the legacy he'd discovered. The weight of the wand that waited in his trunk. The weight of Slytherin's words. "You must restore the true legacy of Slytherin. You must show the world that the Founders' teachings were not about hatred or prejudice. They were about protection, preservation, and the pursuit of knowledge." He didn't know how he was going to do it. He didn't know if he could. But he knew one thing for certain, he had to try. For his parents. For his friends. For everyone who was counting on him. He had to become the wizard he was always meant to be. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of classes and homework and growing friendships. Harry threw himself into his studies with a determination that surprised even himself. He read every textbook, practiced every spell, and spent hours in the library researching the history of the Founders and the Chamber of Secrets. But he kept his discoveries to himself. He didn't tell Ron or Hermione or Neville about the wand or the books or the ring. He didn't tell them about the ghost of Salazar Slytherin or the trials he'd faced or the truth about the Founders' legacy. He couldn't. Not yet. He needed to understand it all first. He needed to be sure. And so, night after night, when the castle was quiet and his friends were asleep, Harry crept down to the Chamber of Secrets. He read the books Slytherin had left behind, studying the ancient magic that the Founder had preserved. He practiced with the wand, learning its secrets and its power. And he listened to the hissing voice that echoed through the chamber, guiding him, teaching him, shaping him into the wizard he was meant to become. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Harry discovered the true depth of Slytherin's legacy. He was reading one of the ancient books, its pages filled with Parseltongue script, when he came across a passage that made his blood run cold. "The chamber is not merely a vault of relics," the book said. "It is a repository of knowledge. Of power. Of the very essence of the Founder's magic. And at its heart lies the greatest treasure of all, the serpent's crown, a diadem that grants its wearer the wisdom and the insight of all. The Founders combined." Harry read the passage again, his heart racing. A diadem. A crown. The wisdom of all the Founders combined. It was more than he'd ever dreamed of. More than he'd ever hoped for. But there was a warning, too. "The crown is not a gift," the book said. "It is a test. Only those who are worthy can bear its weight. Only those who are pure of heart can wear its power. Any who seek to use it for selfish ends will be consumed by the very wisdom they desire." Harry closed the book, his mind reeling. The serpent's crown. It was what he'd been searching for, the key to understanding Slytherin's legacy, the tool that would help him restore the Founder's true teachings. But it was also a test. A test of his worthiness. A test of his heart. He knew he had to find it. He had to claim it. But he also knew that he had to be careful. He had to be sure that he was worthy. That he wasn't just another wizard seeking power for its own sake. You are not defined by your blood or your legacy, Slytherin's voice echoed in his mind. You are defined by your choices. Your actions. Your heart. Harry took a deep breath and made a decision. He would find the crown. He would claim it. But he would only use its power for good. For the protection of the people he loved. For the restoration of Slytherin's true legacy. He would become the wizard he was always meant to be. The weeks passed, and Harry continued his secret visits to the chamber. He studied the books, practiced with the wand, and learned the ancient magic that Slytherin had preserved. He grew stronger, more confident, more certain of his purpose. But he also grew more isolated. Ron and Hermione noticed the changes in him, the way he withdrew from their conversations, the way his eyes seemed to be looking at something they couldn't see. They asked him if he was okay, but he always deflected, saying he was just tired or stressed or overwhelmed. He hated lying to them. Hated keeping secrets. But he couldn't tell them the truth. Not yet. Not until he understood everything. And then, one night, everything changed. Harry was in the chamber, studying the ancient texts, when he felt a shift in the air. A presence. A weight that pressed down on him from all sides. He looked up, and the ghost of Salazar Slytherin was standing before him. You are ready, Heir, the ghost said, and its voice was warm with approval. You have studied. You have practiced. You have grown. It is time for you to claim the serpent's crown. Harry's heart raced. Where is it? How do I find it? The ghost smiled, and it was a smile full of mystery and ancient knowledge. The crown is hidden in the heart of the chamber, protected by the legacy of the founders. To reach it, you must prove yourself worthy, not just of Slytherin's blood, but of the wisdom and the courage of all the founders combined. How do I do that? Harry asked. The ghost gestured toward the far wall of the chamber, where a massive door stood, covered in carvings of the four founders, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin himself. Pass through that door, the ghost said. Face the trials within. Prove that you are worthy of the wisdom you seek. And when you emerge, you will claim the serpent's crown. Harry stared at the door. It was the most terrifying thing he'd ever seen, a gateway to the unknown, a test of everything he was and everything he could become. But he didn't hesitate. All right, he said, his voice steady with determination. I'll face the trials. I'll prove I'm worthy. I'll claim the crown. The ghost nodded, its form flickering with a faint, approving light. Then go, Heir. Your journey is just beginning. Harry walked toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what he would find on the other side. He didn't know if he would succeed. But he knew one thing for certain. He was the heir of Slytherin. The blood of the founders ran through his veins. And he would prove himself worthy of their legacy. He pushed open the door and stepped through, into the darkness beyond. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3, The Chamber Awakens. The darkness on the other side of the door was different from the darkness of the chamber. It was alive, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the beating of Harry's heart. The air was thick and warm, carrying the scent of earth and ancient stone and something else, something that reminded him of the forbidden forest after a summer rain. Harry took a step forward, and the door swung shut behind him with a soft thud that echoed in the vast space ahead. He was alone now, cut off from everything he knew, standing at the threshold of a trial that would determine whether he was worthy of the serpent's crown. I can do this, he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible in the heavy silence. I've faced worse. I've faced Voldemort. I've faced the Dursleys. I can face this. But even as he said it, he felt the weight of the chamber pressing down on him, ancient and judgmental. This was not a trial of brute strength or magical power. It was a trial of the heart. A trial of the soul. He walked forward, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor, and the darkness began to recede. Torches flared to life along the walls, their flames burning a brilliant emerald green, illuminating a long corridor that stretched ahead of him. The walls were covered in murals, scenes from the history of Hogwarts, painted in vivid colors that seemed to shift and move as he passed. The first mural showed the four founders standing together, their hands clasped in unity. Gryffindor, tall and strong, his sword gleaming at his side. Ravenclaw, serene and wise, her diadem sparkling on her brow. Hufflepuff, warm and welcoming, her cup held high in celebration. And Slytherin, proud and ambitious, his serpent staff raised in salute. "This is what we built," a voice said, and it was not Slytherin's voice but something older, something that carried the weight of all four founders. "This is what we dreamed of. A place where magic could flourish. A place where young wizards and witches could learn and grow and become the best versions of themselves." Harry paused, staring at the mural. The founders looked so young in the painting, so full of hope and purpose. They hadn't known what the future would bring. They hadn't known that their legacy would be twisted and corrupted by those who came after. "Your dream was beautiful," Harry said softly. "But it didn't last. Voldemort ruined it. He took Slytherin's teachings and twisted them into something dark. Something evil." "Yes," the voice said, and there was a note of sorrow in it. "But that is not the end of the story. The dream can be restored. The legacy can be reclaimed. But only by one who is worthy." The mural shifted, the colors swirling like water, reforming into a new image. This one showed Slytherin standing alone, his back to the other founders, his staff raised in defiance. His face was shadowed, his expression unreadable. "This is the moment of division," the voice said. "The moment when Slytherin chose to leave Hogwarts. He was not evil, Harry. He was simply afraid. Afraid of the growing power of the Muggles. Afraid that the school he loved would be destroyed by those who did not understand magic. He made a choice that he believed was necessary. But it was a choice that led to centuries of misunderstanding and pain." Harry stared at the mural, his heart aching for the founder who had been so misunderstood. He knew what it was like to be alone. To be afraid. To make choices that others didn't understand. "What happened to him?" Harry asked. "After he left?" "He wandered," the voice said. "He traveled the world, seeking knowledge and power. He built the Chamber of Secrets, preserving his legacy for the heir who would one day come. And he died alone, knowing that his dream had been lost to the very fear he had tried to escape." Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. "He died alone. Like my parents." "Yes," the voice said, and there was a note of compassion in it now. "Like your parents. Like so many who have been lost to the darkness. But you, Harry, you have a chance to break the cycle. To restore what was lost. To bring the founder's dream back to life." Harry wiped his eyes and nodded. "I'll do it. I'll restore the legacy. I promise." The mural shifted again, and the corridor ahead of him opened into a vast chamber. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with statues of the four founders. Each statue was massive, carved from stone that seemed to glow with an inner light. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal rested a golden crown. The serpent's crown. Harry's breath caught in his throat. The crown was beautiful, a delicate circlet of gold, set with emeralds that glittered like the eyes of a snake. It seemed to pulse with a faint light, calling to him, inviting him to claim it. But between him and the crown stood a barrier of shimmering magic, a wall of light that seemed to hum with ancient power. "The first trial," the voice said. "You must prove that you possess the courage of Gryffindor. Face the guardian that stands before you, and do not falter." From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and imposing, clad in armor of burnished gold. It was a knight, its face hidden behind a visor, its hands gripping a massive sword. It moved toward Harry with slow, deliberate steps, its sword raised in challenge. Harry's hand went to his wand, his own wand, the one from Ollivander's, but he hesitated. This was a trial of courage, not of magic. He needed to face the guardian with his heart, not his spells. "Who are you?" Harry asked, his voice steady despite the fear that churned in his stomach. The knight lowered its sword, its visor lifting to reveal a face that was both ancient and familiar. It was the face of Godric Gryffindor himself, his eyes warm with approval. "You have passed the first trial, Harry Potter," the knight said, and its voice was rich with pride. You did not attack. You did not flee. You faced me with courage and asked who I was. That is the heart of Gryffindor, not blind bravery, but the wisdom to know when to fight and when to understand. The knight bowed, its form dissolving into light, and the barrier shimmered and vanished. Harry walked forward, his heart pounding, and approached the pedestal. The crown glowed brighter as he drew near, its emeralds catching the light and scattering it across the room. The second trial, the voice said. You must prove that you possess the wisdom of Ravenclaw. Answer the riddle that lies before you. A scroll appeared on the pedestal, its ancient parchment curling at the edges. Harry unrolled it and read the words written in shimmering gold ink. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I? Harry stared at the riddle, his mind racing. He'd never been good at riddles. Hermione was the one with the quick mind, the one who could solve puzzles in seconds. But he was alone now, and he had to find the answer himself. I speak without a mouth, he muttered, pacing back and forth. I hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. He closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. And then, suddenly, it came to him. An echo, he said. The answer is an echo. The scroll glowed brightly, its words shimmering and disappearing. The pedestal descended slightly, revealing a second level of the crown's base. You have passed the second trial, the voice said, and there was a note of approval in it now. You have shown the wisdom of Ravenclaw. Only one trial remains. Harry felt a surge of hope. He was close. So close. But he knew the final trial would be the hardest. The third trial, the voice said. You must prove that you possess the loyalty of Hufflepuff. You must make a sacrifice. What are you willing to give up for the power of the crown? Harry froze. A sacrifice. What could he possibly give up? He had so little, his friends, his wand, his life. What could he offer that would be worthy of the crown? He thought about his parents, about the legacy they'd left behind. He thought about Ron and Hermione and Neville, about the friendships he'd formed in the short time he'd been at Hogwarts. He thought about the Chamber of Secrets, about Slytherin's legacy, about everything he'd discovered in the past few weeks. And then, suddenly, he knew. I'll give up the wand, he said, his voice firm. The wand of Slytherin. I'll give it back to the chamber. I don't need it to be worthy of the legacy. The chamber was silent for a long moment. And then, the voice spoke again, and there was a note of profound respect in it. You would give up the power of the Founder's wand? The wand that carries the heart of Slytherin's magic? Yes, Harry said, his voice unwavering. I don't need power to be worthy. I need to be true to myself. That's what Hufflepuff would have wanted, loyalty to what's right, not to what's powerful. The pedestal shuddered, and the crown rose into the air, hovering before Harry's eyes. Its light intensified, bathing him in a warm, golden glow. You have passed the third trial, Harry Potter, the voice said, and it was no longer a single voice but a chorus, the voices of all four founders, united in praise. You have shown the courage of Gryffindor, the wisdom of Ravenclaw, the loyalty of Hufflepuff, and the ambition of Slytherin. You are worthy of the crown. The crown descended, settling gently on Harry's brow. And the world exploded into light. He was standing in a great hall, surrounded by the founders themselves. Gryffindor, tall and proud, his sword at his side. Ravenclaw, serene and beautiful, her diadem sparkling. Hufflepuff, warm and maternal, her eyes full of love. And Slytherin, standing apart. His gaze fixed on Harry with an intensity that made his heart race. You have done what no other has done, Slytherin said, and his voice was filled with awe. You have proven yourself worthy of the legacy I left behind. Not through power or blood, but through your heart. Harry looked down at his hands, expecting to see the crown still there. But it was gone, vanished as quickly as it had appeared. And yet, he could feel its power, a warmth that spread through his veins, a knowledge that filled his mind. What happened to the crown? He asked. It is a part of you now, Ravenclaw said, her voice like chiming bells. The wisdom of all the founders flows through your blood. You do not need a physical crown to carry our legacy. You carry it in your heart. Harry felt tears stream down his face. He was overwhelmed by the weight of their words, the depth of their trust. I don't know if I can do this, he said. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Gryffindor stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. Strength is not about never falling, Harry. It's about getting back up every time you do. And you have gotten back up more times than anyone I have ever known. Hufflepuff smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. You are not alone, Harry. You have friends. You have allies. And now, you have us, the founders, watching over you from beyond the veil. Slytherin stepped forward, his expression softer than Harry had ever seen it. I am proud of you, Heir. Prouder than I ever thought I could be. You have taken my legacy and made it your own. You have proven that the blood of Slytherin can be a force for good. Harry nodded, unable to speak. The emotions were too much, grief and hope and determination all tangled together in his chest. Go now, Ravenclaw said. Return to your friends. Restore the legacy. And remember, you are always worthy of the crown. Always worthy of our trust. The light faded, and Harry found himself back in the Chamber of Secrets, standing before the door of the Founder's Trial. The door was closed, but he knew he would never have to open it again. The trials were over. He had passed. He walked back through the chamber, his steps lighter now, his heart full. He passed the statue of Slytherin, which seemed to smile at him as he went. He passed the books and the relics, the treasures that had been waiting for centuries for the true heir to claim them. And when he reached the entrance to the chamber, he paused. Thank you, he said, speaking to the walls, to the air, to the spirit of Slytherin that he knew was watching. Thank you for trusting me. I won't let you down. A gentle breeze brushed against his cheek, and he knew he'd been heard. Harry slipped back into the castle just as dawn was breaking. The corridors were empty, the portraits dozing in their frames. He made his way to the Gryffindor common room, his feet carrying him on autopilot. When he reached the portrait hole, he was surprised to find Hermione waiting for him. She was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, a book open on her lap. But she wasn't reading. She was staring at the entrance, her expression one of barely concealed worry. Harry, she exclaimed, scrambling to her feet. Where have you been? I've been looking for you for hours. Harry's heart clenched with guilt. He'd been so focused on the trials, on the chamber, on the legacy of Slytherin, that he'd forgotten about his friends. About the people who cared about him. I'm sorry, he said. I just needed some time alone. I've been thinking about things. Hermione's eyes narrowed. She knew he was lying, she was too clever not to notice the evasion. But she didn't push. That was one of the things Harry loved about her. She knew when to press and when to give space. Ron was worried too, she said. He didn't say anything, but I could tell. He keeps looking at your empty bed and frowning. He's probably downstairs in the common room now, pretending to play chess. While actually worrying about you. Harry smiled, the ache in his chest easing slightly. I'll go talk to him. Hermione nodded, but she didn't move. She stood there, her eyes searching his face, and Harry knew she was trying to read him. Harry, she said softly. Whatever is going on with you, you can tell us. We're your friends. We're not going to judge you. Harry felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to tell her everything, about the chamber, about Slytherin, about the crown and the trials and the legacy he was carrying. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he understood it all himself. I know, he said. And I appreciate that. I need time. Time to figure things out. But I promise, I'll tell you when I'm ready. Hermione nodded, accepting his words with a trust that made his heart ache even more. Just promise me you'll be careful. There are dangerous things in this castle. Dark things. Things that even the books don't fully explain. Harry nodded, a shiver running down his spine. He knew exactly how dangerous the castle could be. He'd faced it himself, in the depths of the chamber, in the trials of the founders. "I'll be careful," he said. "I promise." Harry found Ron in a common room, exactly where Hermione had said he'd be. The red-haired boy was staring at a chessboard, his pieces arranged in a formation that made no sense. He looked up when Harry entered, his face lighting up with relief. "Harry. Blimey, where've you been? I was starting to think you'd been eaten by a troll or something." Harry laughed, the sound surprising him. "No trolls. Just, wandering. I couldn't sleep, so I went for a walk." Ron's eyebrows shot up. "A walk? In this castle? At night? You're mental, Harry. The ghosts alone could give you a heart attack. And that's not even counting the suits of armor or the moving staircases or—" "I know," Harry said, settling into the chair across from him. "I just needed to clear my head." Ron studied him for a moment. His gaze sharp with a concern that belied his casual demeanor. "You've been acting strange lately, mate. Distant. Like you're not really here." Harry felt a pang of guilt. He'd been so caught up in his own world, in the secrets of the chamber, that he'd neglected the people who mattered most. "I'm sorry," he said. "I've just had a lot on my mind. But I'm fine. Really." Ron didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. "All right. But if you ever want to talk about it, about anything, I'm here. That's what friends are for, right?" Harry nodded, the words warming him from the inside out. "Right. Thanks, Ron." Ron grinned, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Now, come on. Tell me what you think of this chess move. I've been trying to figure out how to beat Hermione, and she's got this strategy that's driving me mad." Harry smiled and leaned forward, his eyes scanning the board. For a few moments, he was able to forget the weight of the crown, the pressure of the legacy, the secrets that pressed against his chest. He was just Harry, a boy playing chess with his best friend. But even as he focused on the game, he could feel the crown's power pulsing at the edges of his consciousness. It was waiting, patient and ancient, for him to embrace it fully. And he knew, deep down, that the moment of reckoning was coming. The weeks that followed were a blur of classes and friendships and quiet moments of discovery. Harry grew stronger, both in his magic and in his confidence. The crown's power flowed through him like a second heartbeat, giving him insight and strength he'd never known before. He could see things more clearly now, the patterns in the magic that surrounded him, the connections between the founders' legacies, the way that each house contributed to the school's balance. He understood, with a clarity that surprised him, that the houses were not meant to be rivals. They were meant to be complements. Each one filling a gap that the others left. But he also saw the fractures in that balance. The way that Slytherin house had been ostracized and villainized. The way that Gryffindors often looked down on those they deemed less brave. The way that Ravenclaws could be elitist, Hufflepuffs dismissed as followers. The divisions were subtle, but they were there, and they weakened the entire school. "This is what you must heal," Slytherin's voice whispered in his mind. "This is your task, Heir. To restore the unity that the founders dreamed of." Harry took the task seriously. He studied harder, learned faster, and grew more determined with each passing day. He read every book he could find on the founders' history, seeking to understand the nuances that the textbooks ignored. He spoke with his friends, learning from their perspectives, their insights, their dreams. And he began to see the way forward. A path that would unite the houses, restore the legacy, and defeat the darkness that was coming. But he couldn't do it alone. He needed allies. He needed friends. He needed to trust the people around him with the truth. And so, one night, when the castle was quiet and the fire in the common room burned low, Harry gathered Ron and Hermione in a corner of the room. Neville came too, drawn by the urgency in Harry's voice. "I need to tell you something," Harry said, his voice heavy with the weight of the secret he'd been carrying for so long. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." Ron and Hermione exchanged a look, their faces growing serious. Neville leaned forward, his eyes wide with curiosity. "What is it, Harry?" Hermione asked. "What's been going on with you?" Harry took a deep breath and began to speak. He told them about the Sorting Hat's whispers. About the Parseltongue that ran through his blood. About the Chamber of Secrets, the trials of the Founders, the serpent's crown that now sat on his head like an invisible weight. He told them about Slytherin's legacy, the truth behind the lies, the history that had been buried for centuries. He told them about the vision of the Founders' dream, a school united in purpose and strength. And he told them about the crown, the power that hummed through his veins, the responsibility that he now carried. When he finished, the room was silent. Ron was staring at him, his mouth agape. Hermione's eyes were wide with shock. Neville's face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. "Blimey," Ron breathed. "You're the heir of Slytherin. The actual heir." "I am," Harry said. "But I'm still the same person. I'm still Harry. I'm still your friend." Hermione's eyes filled with tears. "Of course you are," she said, her voice fierce. "We don't care about your blood or your legacy. We care about you." Neville nodded, his expression determined. "You're still Harry. Nothing changes that." Ron reached out and clapped Harry on the shoulder. "You're still a git for keeping this from us," he said, but his voice was warm. "But I suppose I can forgive you. This time." Harry felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost overwhelmed him. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Probably get eaten by a basilisk," Ron said with a grin. "But we're here, so you don't have to worry about that." Harry laughed, the sound echoing through the common room. And for the first time in weeks, he felt truly at peace. The next day, Harry stood on the Quidditch pitch, the wind whipping through his hair as he watched the team practice. He was supposed to be practicing too, but he couldn't focus. The crown's power hummed in his mind, showing him patterns and connections that he couldn't ignore. "The darkness is coming," Slytherin's voice whispered. "Voldemort is growing stronger. He will seek to claim the legacy that you have taken. You must prepare." Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. He knew what he had to do. He had to master the magic of the Founders. He had to unite the school. He had to defeat the darkness that had plagued the wizarding world for too long. But he couldn't do it alone. He needed his friends. He needed his allies. He needed to trust in the power of unity. And that was exactly what he intended to do. "Harry." He turned to find Ron running toward him, his face flushed with excitement. "Harry, you've got to come quick. Something's happened in the dungeons. The Slytherins are saying there's a monster in the Chamber of Secrets." Harry's heart clenched. The chamber. The basilisk. The legacy that Voldemort had corrupted. "I'll be right there," he said, his voice steady with determination. Ron nodded, turning to run back toward the castle. But Harry didn't move. He stood on the Quidditch pitch, the wind whipping through his hair, and he felt the crown's power surge through him. "The time has come," Slytherin's voice said. "The chamber awakens. And so must you." Harry took a deep breath and began to walk toward the castle. The War of the Heirs had begun. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, The War of the Heirs. The dungeons were chaos. Harry pushed through the crowd of students that had gathered outside the Slytherin common room, his heart pounding against his ribs. The air was thick with fear and confusion, voices overlapping in a frantic chorus of questions and accusations. Torches flickered along the stone walls, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. "What's happening?" someone shouted. "Is it true? Is the chamber really open? I heard it was a monster. A giant snake that can kill with a single glance. The heir of Slytherin has returned. They're going to purge the school of Muggleborns." Harry pushed through the crowd, his jaw tight with determination. He knew the truth now, knew that the chamber wasn't a weapon of destruction, but a legacy of protection. Knew that the basilisk wasn't a killer, but a guardian. And he knew, with a certainty that burned in his chest, that Voldemort was behind this. Somehow, some way, the Dark Lord had found a way to corrupt Slytherin's legacy once again. Harry! Harry, over here! He turned to find Hermione and Ron pushing through the crowd toward him, their faces pale with worry. Neville followed close behind, his hands trembling as he clutched his toad. What's going on? Ron demanded. The Slytherins are saying the Chamber of Secrets has been opened. They're saying the heir of Slytherin is going to attack Muggleborns. They're saying. They're wrong, Harry said firmly. The chamber isn't what they think it is. The heir of Slytherin isn't who they think it is. Hermione's eyes widened. Harry, what do you mean? What do you know about this? Harry opened his mouth to explain, but before he could speak, a cold voice cut through the chaos. Out of the way. Let me through. The crowd parted like a wave, revealing Professor Snape in all his dark, brooding glory. His black robes billowed behind him as he strode forward, his eyes fixed on Harry with an intensity that made Harry's blood run cold. Potter, Snape said, his voice dripping with venom. I might have known you'd be at the center of this. What do you know about the Chamber of Secrets? Harry met his gaze, refusing to flinch. I know it's been opened, Professor. But I'm not the one who opened it. Snape's lip curled. And yet here you are, standing in the middle of the chaos. How convenient. Professor, Silence. Snape's voice cracked like a whip. You will come with me. The headmaster wishes to speak with you. Harry's heart clenched. Dumbledore. Of course Dumbledore would want to speak with him. The old wizard had a way of knowing things he shouldn't, of seeing through the walls that others built around themselves. But Harry also knew that Dumbledore was the one person who might actually understand. The one person who might believe him. All right, Harry said, his voice steady. I'll come. Ron stepped forward, his expression fierce. If you're taking. Harry, you're taking me too. Snape's gaze flicked to Ron, and something dark passed behind his eyes. Mr. Weasley, this does not concern you. Return to your common room. Ron, it's fine, Harry said quickly. I'll be all right. I promise. Ron looked like he wanted to argue, but he swallowed his protest and nodded reluctantly. Fine. But if you're not back in an hour, I'm coming to find you. Basilisk or no basilisk. Snape's eyebrow twitched, but he said nothing. He simply turned on his heel and strode away, leaving Harry to follow in his wake. The walk to Dumbledore's office was long and silent. Snape said nothing, his black robes swirling around him like a storm cloud. Harry followed, his mind racing with everything that was about to happen. The chamber had been opened. Voldemort was making his move. And Harry was caught in the middle, the heir of Slytherin, the boy who lived, the one who carried the crown's power in his blood. Stay calm, Slytherin's voice whispered in his mind. The headmaster is wise. He will see the truth if you let him. Harry took a deep breath, letting the Founder's words steady him. He could do this. He had to do this. Dumbledore's office was exactly as Harry remembered it, a circular room filled with strange instruments and portraits of ancient headmasters. The old wizard sat behind his desk, his blue eyes twinkling with a warmth that seemed out of place given the chaos of the night. Ah, Harry, Dumbledore said, gesturing for him to sit. Thank you for coming. Professor Snape, you may leave us. Snape looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded curtly and swept out of the room, leaving Harry alone with the headmaster. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, his eyes sharp with a knowledge that made Harry feel like he was being X-rayed. Harry, Dumbledore said softly. I suspect you know why I called you here. Harry nodded, his throat tight. The Chamber of Secrets. It's been opened. Yes, Dumbledore said. And there are those who believe that you are responsible. That you are the heir of Slytherin. Harry felt his heart stutter. Professor, Dumbledore held up a hand. I know you are not responsible, Harry. I know you have been visiting the chamber. I know about the crown. I know about Salazar Slytherin's ghost. Harry's blood ran cold. How do you? I am the headmaster of Hogwarts, Dumbledore said, a faint smile playing at his lips. I know many things, Harry. I know, for example, that the blood of Slytherin runs through your veins. I know that the founder appeared to you and declared you his true heir. And I know that you have been carrying the weight of that legacy with a courage that would make your parents proud. Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. Then why did you let me go through it alone? Why didn't you tell me what I was? Dumbledore's expression softened. Because some things must be discovered on one's own, Harry. The knowledge you have gained in the chamber is worth more than anything I could have told you. You have faced the trials of the founders. You have proven yourself worthy of their legacy. And now, you must decide what to do with that legacy. Harry stared at the old wizard, his mind reeling. He'd been so sure that Dumbledore would be angry, would be disappointed, would see him as a threat. Instead, he saw nothing but understanding in the headmaster's eyes. I want to restore the legacy, Harry said, his voice firm. I want to show the world that Slytherin wasn't evil. That the chamber wasn't meant to hurt anyone. That the basilisk was a guardian, not a weapon. Dumbledore nodded slowly. A noble goal. But there are those who will oppose you, Harry. Those who see Slytherin's legacy as a threat. Those who want to use it for their own purposes. And those who want to destroy it entirely. I know, Harry said. But I don't care. I have to try. For my parents. For the founders. For everyone who's been hurt by the lies and the hatred. Dumbledore smiled, and his eyes twinkled with a warmth that made Harry's heart swell. Then you have my support, Harry. Whatever you need, answers, allies, protection, I will provide. But you must be careful. The War of the Heirs is about to begin, and you are at the center of it. Harry nodded, a fierce determination burning in his chest. I'm ready. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The opening of the chamber had sent shockwaves through the school, and the tension was palpable. Muggleborns were terrified, purebloods were suspicious, and everyone was looking for someone to blame. Harry, with the help of his friends, began his campaign to restore Slytherin's legacy. He spoke to anyone who would listen, telling them the truth about the chamber and its purpose. He showed them the books he'd found in the chamber, the records of Slytherin's true teachings, the evidence that the founder had not been the monster the histories claimed. But not everyone was willing to listen. Draco Malfoy had become his most vocal opponent. The blonde Slytherin had seized upon the chamber's opening as proof that pureblood supremacy was justified, that Muggleborns were a threat that had to be eliminated. He'd gathered a group of followers around him, students who shared his twisted beliefs, and they'd begun to spread their own version of the truth. The chamber was open to purge the school, Draco announced at a gathering of Slytherins in the common room. The heir of Slytherin has returned, and they are going to restore the school to its rightful order. Muggleborns will be driven out, and purebloods will rule once more. Harry heard about Draco's speech from Ron, who'd been spying on the Slytherin common room through a carefully placed extendable ear. We have to stop him, Ron said, his face flushed with anger. He's twisting everything. He's making people believe that you're some kind of dark wizard. Harry shook his head. I'm not going to fight Draco with words. I'm going to show people the truth. The real truth. And if they still choose to believe his lies, then that's their choice. Hermione looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. Harry, you can't change everyone's mind. Some people are too set in their ways. They've been raised to believe that Slytherin is evil, that Muggleborns are inferior. They're not going to listen to reason. Then I'll show them, Harry said. I'll show them what Slytherin's legacy really means. I'll prove that the founder wasn't a monster. And I'll do it by using his power for good. Harry's first major test came when he announced that he would be hosting a gathering in the Chamber of Secrets. He sent out invitations to students from all 4 houses, inviting them to come and see the chamber for themselves, to learn the truth about Slytherin's legacy. The response was mixed. Some students were eager to see the chamber, curious about the mystery that had surrounded it for centuries. Others were skeptical, afraid that it was a trap, that Harry was going to unleash the basilisk on them. But enough students agreed to come that Harry knew he had a chance. The night of the gathering, Harry stood at the entrance to the chamber, his heart pounding with nerves. He was flanked by Ron and Hermione, who'd insisted on being there to support him. Neville stood nearby, his toad clutched to his chest, his expression one of nervous excitement. "Are you ready for this?" Hermione asked softly. Harry nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." He spoke the Parseltongue words to open the door, and the massive stone entrance slid open, revealing the winding corridor that led to the heart of the chamber. The students who'd come to see the chamber gasped, their eyes wide with wonder. "Follow me," Harry said, his voice echoing in the darkness. He led them through the corridor and into the vast chamber where the statue of Slytherin stood. The room was lit by the green glow of the torches, the serpent carvings writhing in the shadows. The basilisk was nowhere to be seen. Harry had convinced the ancient serpent to stay hidden for the evening, not wanting to frighten the students. "This is the Chamber of Secrets," Harry announced. "This is where Salazar Slytherin left his legacy. And I'm going to show you what that legacy really means." He pulled out one of the ancient books he'd found in the chamber, its pages filled with Slytherin's teachings. He began to read aloud, his voice carrying through the chamber. "I did not build this school to divide wizards. I built it to unite them. To protect them. To give them a place where they could learn and grow and become the best versions of themselves. The Muggles hunted us. They burned our families. They drowned our children. I wanted to create a sanctuary. A place where magic could flourish without fear." The students listened in silence, their faces shifting from suspicion to curiosity to something that might have been understanding. "I did not hate Muggleborns. I feared for them. I feared that they would be targeted by those who sought to destroy us. I wanted to protect them. To keep them safe. But my methods were flawed. I was arrogant and stubborn. I pushed away those who could have helped me. I left my school behind, knowing that I had failed to build the dream we'd all shared." Harry closed the book, tears streaming down his face. "He wasn't evil," he said, his voice breaking. "He was just a man. A flawed, complicated man who made mistakes. But he also tried to do something good. He tried to build something that would last." The silence stretched for a long moment. And then, slowly, a round of applause began. It started with a few of the Hufflepuffs, who'd always been the most open-minded, and spread to the Ravenclaws and Gryffindors. Even a few Slytherins clapped, their faces showing a mix of pride and shame. "Thank you," Harry said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for listening. I know this is a lot to take in. But I promise you, the truth is worth fighting for. The truth is what will save us." The gathering was a turning point. In the days that followed, Harry began to see a shift in the school's attitude toward Slytherin House. Students who'd once shunned the green-clad students were now more willing to talk to them, to understand them. The rivalries that had divided the houses began to soften, replaced by a tentative sense of unity. But Harry also knew that the war was far from over. Draco Malfoy, furious at the success of Harry's gathering, redoubled his efforts to undermine him. He spread rumors that Harry had faked the books, that Slytherin's legacy was a lie, that the Chamber of Secrets was a weapon that Harry was planning to use against Muggleborns. "Potter is a fraud," Draco announced to a crowd of Slytherins. "He's not the heir of Slytherin. He's just a half-blood who's trying to steal the legacy for himself." Harry heard about Draco's claims and knew he had to act. He couldn't let Draco's lies take root. He had to show the school the truth, not just in words, but in actions. And so, he did the one thing he'd been avoiding for weeks. He went to find the basilisk. The journey to the basilisk's lair was terrifying. Harry descended deeper into the chamber than he'd ever gone before, following the hissing whispers that guided him through the twisting tunnels. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, until Harry could barely see his own hand in front of his face. And then, he found it. The basilisk was enormous, its body coiled around a massive stone pillar, its scales glistening in the faint green light. Its eyes were closed, but Harry knew they could open at any moment, and that a single glance would mean instant death. Hello, Harry said, his voice steady despite the fear that churned in his stomach. I'm Harry, the heir of Slytherin. I've come to ask for your help. The basilisk's head lifted, its eyes still closed, its tongue flickering out to taste the air. You are the one who carries the crown, the basilisk hissed, its voice ancient and resonant. I can feel its power within you. Why have you come? The school is in danger, Harry said. There are those who want to use your legacy for evil. They want to turn you into a weapon. But I know that's not what you were meant to be. You were meant to be a guardian. A protector. The basilisk was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer, almost sad. I was meant to protect the school. To protect the students. But I was used. Twisted. Forced to do things I did not wish to do. I know, Harry said. That's why I've come. I want to set you free. I want you to choose your own path. The basilisk's eyes flickered, and Harry felt a surge of hope. You would set me free? The basilisk asked. Even knowing what I am capable of. I trust you, Harry said. Slytherin trusted you. And I trust his judgment. The basilisk's body uncoiled, and it lowered its massive head to Harry's level. Harry reached out, his hand shaking, and touched the creature's scales. They were warm and smooth, vibrating with a faint hum of magic. You are a true heir, the basilisk said. I will help you, Harry Potter. I will protect the school. I will not be used as a weapon ever again. Harry smiled, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. Harry's alliance with the basilisk was the final piece of his plan. With the ancient serpent by his side, he was able to prove to the school that the Chamber of Secrets was not a weapon, but a sanctuary. He showed them the basilisk, not as a monster, but as a guardian. He showed them the true teachings of Slytherin, not as a call to hatred, but as a call to protection. And slowly, the tide began to turn. The ministry, however, was not so easily convinced. Fudge arrived at Hogwarts with a contingent of Aurors, his face red with anger. Potter has unleashed a monster on the school. He announced to the gathered students. He must be stopped. Harry stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. Minister, the basilisk is not a monster. It's a guardian. It was placed here by Salazar Slytherin to protect the school. And I am his true heir, chosen by the founder himself. Fudge's face went from red to purple. Preposterous. Slytherin's heir is a dark wizard. A servant of you-know-who. Harry shook his head. You're wrong, Minister. Slytherin's legacy is not about darkness. It's about protection. Preservation. The pursuit of knowledge. And I'm going to prove it to you. The confrontation with the ministry was Harry's most difficult test yet. Fudge was stubborn, convinced that Harry was a threat, and nothing Harry said could persuade him otherwise. But then, Dumbledore stepped in. Cornelius, the headmaster said, his voice calm but firm. I can assure you that Harry Potter is not a threat to this school. He has been working tirelessly to restore Slytherin's true legacy. And I have seen the evidence with my own eyes. Fudge sputtered. Albus, you can't seriously believe. I believe in the truth, Cornelius, Dumbledore said. And I believe in Harry Potter. The Aurors lowered their wands. Fudge stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Very well, Fudge said finally. But I'll be watching you, Potter. One wrong move, and I'll have you in Azkaban before you can blink. The War of the Heirs was far from over. The ministry was watching Harry, Draco was still spreading lies, and there were whispers that Voldemort was growing stronger, building an army to challenge the new heir of Slytherin. But Harry knew he wasn't alone. He had his friends. He had the founder's legacy. And he had the crown, its power humming in his blood, guiding him toward his destiny. I will restore Slytherin's true legacy, Harry said, standing in the Chamber of Secrets, the basilisk coiled at his side. I will prove that the blood of Slytherin can be a force for good. And I will defeat the darkness that threatens the wizarding world. The basilisk nodded its massive head. And I will stand with you, Heir. Until the very end. Harry smiled, the crown's power blazing in his chest. He was ready. He was strong. He was the heir of Slytherin. And he was going to win. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5, The Legacy Restored. The aftermath of the Ministry confrontation left Hogwarts in a state of fragile calm. The Aurors had departed, but their presence lingered like a shadow over the castle walls. Students whispered in corridors, their eyes darting toward Harry with a mixture of awe and suspicion. He had become a figure of legend once again, but this time, the legend was more complicated than anyone knew how to handle. Harry felt the weight of it all pressing down on him as he walked through the sunlit grounds, the grass soft beneath his feet. Spring had arrived at Hogwarts, painting the landscape in shades of green and gold, but Harry barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, caught in the web of secrets and responsibilities that had become his life. You are distracted, the basilisk's voice hissed in his mind. Your thoughts wander where they should not. Harry smiled faintly. The basilisk had taken to speaking with him throughout the day, its ancient consciousness brushing against us like a whisper of wind. It was comforting, in a strange way, to know that he was never truly alone. I'm just thinking, Harry said aloud, though he knew the basilisk could hear him even without words. About everything that's happened. About what comes next. The war is not over, the basilisk said. The Dark Lord grows stronger. I can feel his presence in the shadows, reaching for the legacy you have claimed. Harry nodded, his jaw tightening. Voldemort. The name sent a chill down his spine, even now. The Dark Lord had been quiet since the chamber's opening, but Harry knew it was only a matter of time before he made his move. I know, Harry said. But I'm not afraid. Not anymore. Courage is not the absence of fear, the basilisk said. It is the will to act despite it. You have that will, Heir. That is why you are worthy. Harry felt a warmth spread through his chest at the words. The basilisk's approval meant more to him than he could express. It was a validation of everything he'd been fighting for. Thank you, he said softly. For believing in me. I have believed in you since the moment you spoke the language of my blood, the basilisk said. You are the one I have been waiting for. The one who will restore what was lost. Harry stopped walking, his eyes fixed on the distant castle. He could see the towers rising against the sky, the windows glinting in the afternoon sun. It was beautiful, this place. It was home. And he was going to protect it. No matter what. The weeks that followed were a time of preparation. Harry threw himself into his studies with a fervor that surprised even Hermione. He read every book he could find on the Founder's magic, on the history of Hogwarts, on the ancient spells that had been lost to time. He practiced with the wand of Slytherin, learning its secrets, its power, its rhythm. But more than that, he focused on the crown. The serpent's crown, now a part of him, had become his greatest source of strength. It whispered to him in the quiet moments, showing him visions of the past, glimpses of the future, connections he'd never noticed before. And it showed him the truth about Voldemort. The Dark Lord is a descendant of Slytherin, the crown revealed. But his blood is tainted. Corrupted. He sought to claim the legacy through fear and violence, not through understanding and wisdom. He is a pretender, Harry. A false heir. Harry felt a surge of anger at the words. Voldemort had twisted everything. He'd taken Slytherin's teachings and perverted them into something dark and evil. He'd used the basilisk as a weapon. The chamber as a threat. He'd made the world believe that Slytherin's legacy was one of hatred and destruction. He can't be allowed to continue, Harry said, his voice fierce. I have to stop him. You will, the crown said. But not through violence alone. You must show the world the truth. You must restore Slytherin's true legacy. Only then will the Dark Lord's power be broken. Harry nodded, understanding dawning. This wasn't just about defeating Voldemort. It was about changing the narrative. About proving that the blood of Slytherin could be a force for good. And that was exactly what he intended to do. Harry's first step was to reach out to the other houses. He knew that the divisions between Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff had been a source of weakness for centuries. The founders had envisioned a school united in purpose, but that vision had been lost, replaced by rivalries and prejudices that had only grown deeper with time. He began by speaking with the head boy and head girl, students from each house who held positions of authority. He told them about his vision for a united Hogwarts, about the true legacy of the founders, about the need to work together against the darkness that was coming. "It's not going to be easy," he admitted. "There's a lot of bad blood between the houses. But I believe we can overcome it. I believe we can be stronger together." The head girl, a Ravenclaw named Penelope Clearwater, looked skeptical. "And how do you propose we do that? The Slytherins have been spreading rumors about you for months. They're not going to just change their minds overnight." Harry met her gaze, his expression steady. "I know. But I'm not asking them to change their minds. I'm asking them to listen. To give me a chance to prove that I'm not what they think I am." Penelope was silent for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Finally, she nodded. "All right, Potter. I'll help you. But if this blows up in our faces, I'm going to say I told you so." Harry smiled. "Fair enough." The first gathering of the houses was held in the Great Hall. Harry had arranged for the tables to be removed, replaced by a circle of chairs that encouraged conversation and connection. Students from all four houses filed in, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright hostility. Harry stood at the center of the circle, his heart pounding with nerves. He'd spoken in front of crowds before, but this felt different. This was about something bigger than himself. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I know this isn't easy. I know there's a lot of history between the houses, a lot of pain and anger and fear. But I'm asking you to put that aside, just for tonight. I'm asking you to listen." The room was silent, all eyes fixed on him. "I've been learning about the founders," Harry continued. "About the dreams they had for this school. They didn't build Hogwarts to divide us. They built it to unite us. To give us a place where we could learn and grow and become the best versions of ourselves." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I know Slytherin has a bad reputation. I know a lot of people think the founder was evil. But I've seen the truth. I've read his writings, heard his words. He wasn't evil. He was a man who made mistakes, just like all of us. A man who wanted to protect his people, but who let his fear get the better of him." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Harry pressed on. "I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm asking you to learn from it. To see the founders for who they really were, not perfect, but powerful. Not villains, but visionaries. And to carry that vision forward, together." The room was silent for a long moment. And then, slowly, a hand went up. It was a Slytherin, a girl with dark hair and sharp eyes, her expression unreadable. "What do you want from us?" she asked, her voice cool. "What's your real agenda?" Harry met her gaze, unflinching. "I want to restore the legacy of the founders. I want to show the world that the blood of Slytherin can be a force for good. And I want to defeat the darkness that's coming, the darkness that threatens to destroy everything we love." The girl's eyes widened slightly, and Harry knew he'd struck a chord. "And you think we can help you with that?" she asked. "I know you can," Harry said. "Because we're stronger together than we are apart. The founders knew that. And I think, deep down, you know it too." The girl was silent for a long moment. And then, slowly, she nodded. "All right, Potter. I'll give you a chance." Harry smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. It was a small victory, but it was a start. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Harry's gatherings became a regular occurrence, with students from all four houses coming together to learn about the founders' true legacy. The atmosphere in the school began to shift, the old rivalries giving way to a tentative sense of unity. But Harry knew that the real test was still to come. The Ministry had been watching him closely, their suspicion barely concealed. Fudge had made it clear that he considered Harry a threat, and there were whispers that the Aurors were planning to move against him. And then there was Draco Malfoy. The blonde Slytherin had become Harry's most vocal opponent, spreading rumors and lies at every opportunity. He'd gathered a group of followers around him, students who believed in pureblood supremacy and who saw Harry as a traitor to his house. Potter is a fraud, Draco announced to a crowd of Slytherins. He's not the heir of Slytherin. He's just a half-blood who's trying to steal the legacy for himself. Harry heard about the speech from Ron, who'd been spying on the Slytherin common room through a carefully placed extendable ear. "We have to stop him," Ron said, his face flushed with anger. "He's turning people against you." Harry shook his head. "I'm not going to fight Draco with words. I'm going to show people the truth. The real truth. And if they still choose to believe his lies, then that's their choice." Ron looked like he wanted to argue, but he swallowed his protest and nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But if he tries anything, I'm not going to just stand by and watch." Harry smiled, clapping Ron on the shoulder. "I know. And I appreciate it. But I need you to trust me. I know what I'm doing." Ron sighed. "All right, mate. I trust you." The confrontation with Draco came sooner than Harry expected. He was walking through the dungeons, on his way to the Chamber of Secrets, when Draco stepped out of the shadows, flanked by his followers. "Potter," Draco said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Fancy meeting you here." Harry stopped, his hand instinctively reaching for his wand. "Draco. What do you want?" "I want to know what you're really doing," Draco said, stepping closer. "I want to know why you're pretending to be the heir of Slytherin when we both know the truth." Harry met his gaze, unflinching. "What truth is that?" Draco's lips curled into a sneer. "The truth that you're a fraud. A half-blood who's trying to steal a legacy that doesn't belong to you." Harry felt a flash of anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I'm not trying to steal anything, Draco. I'm trying to restore Slytherin's true legacy. The legacy that your family has been twisting for generations." Draco's face went red. "How dare you? My family has been loyal to Slytherin since the beginning. We know the true meaning of the Founder's teachings." "Do you?" Harry asked, his voice soft but firm. "Do you really think Slytherin would have wanted you to use his legacy as an excuse to persecute Muggleborns? Do you think he would have wanted his name to be associated with hatred and fear?" Draco opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time, Harry saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Slytherin wasn't about hatred," Harry continued. "He was about protection. He wanted to keep wizards safe from the Muggles who hunted them. He was flawed, yes. He made mistakes. But he wasn't evil. And neither are the people who carry his blood." Draco was silent, his expression shifting from anger to uncertainty. His followers shifted uncomfortably behind him, their earlier bravado fading. "Think about it, Draco," Harry said softly. "Is this really the legacy you want to carry forward? Hatred and fear and division? Or do you want to be part of something bigger? Something better?" Draco stared at him for a long moment. And then, slowly, he stepped back. "Get out of my sight, Potter," he said, but his voice had lost its venom. "I don't want to look at you anymore." Harry nodded and walked past him, his heart pounding in his chest. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. Draco had listened. That was more than Harry had hoped for. The weeks continued to pass, and Harry's influence grew. More and more students came to his gatherings, eager to learn about the Founder's true legacy. The divisions between the houses began to soften, replaced by a sense of unity that hadn't been seen in centuries. But Harry knew that the real test was still to come. Voldemort was growing stronger. The attacks on Muggleborns were increasing, and there were whispers that the Dark Lord was building an army. Harry knew it was only a matter of time before the war came to Hogwarts. And when it did, he had to be ready. "You are prepared," the basilisk said, its voice a comforting presence in his mind. "You have the crown. You have the wand. You have the knowledge of the Founders. You are ready for what is to come. Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. I know. But I'm still scared. I don't want to lose anyone else. Fear is not a weakness, the basilisk said. It is a reminder of what you are fighting for. Let it fuel your courage, Heir. Let it make you strong. Harry felt a warmth spread through his chest at the words. The basilisk was right. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for his friends, his family, his home. And that made him stronger than any dark wizard could ever be. The day of the final confrontation came without warning. Harry was in the Chamber of Secrets, studying one of the ancient texts, when he felt a shift in the air. A presence. A weight that pressed down on him from all sides. And then, a voice. Cold and cruel and utterly familiar. Hello, Harry. Harry spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. Standing in the entrance to the chamber was a figure that made his blood run cold. Lord Voldemort. The Dark Lord was taller than Harry remembered, his snake-like face twisted into a sneer. His red eyes glowed in the dim light, fixed on Harry with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Voldemort, Harry breathed, his hand reaching for his wand. The Dark Lord laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the chamber. So formal. And here I thought we were family. Harry felt a surge of anger at the words. We're not family. You killed my parents. Ah, yes. Voldemort's lips curled. Your parents. Such a tragic story. But you see, Harry, I was trying to protect the legacy. The legacy that you are now trying to steal. Harry shook his head. I'm not stealing anything. I'm restoring it. I'm showing the world the true meaning of Slytherin's legacy. Foolish boy. Voldemort's voice was cold, dismissive. You know nothing of the legacy. You know nothing of the power that runs through your veins. The power that should be mine. Harry met his gaze, unflinching. The power isn't yours. It never was. You twisted it. Corrupted it. You used it for hatred and fear. But that's not what Slytherin intended. That's not what the founders dreamed of. Voldemort's face twisted with rage. You dare to lecture me? You, a half-blood who knows nothing of true power. I know what power is, Harry said, his voice steady. I know that it's not about control or domination. It's about protection. About preservation. About using what you have to help others. And that's what I'm going to do. Voldemort laughed, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. You are a fool, Harry Potter. A brave fool, perhaps. But a fool nonetheless. Maybe, Harry said. But I'm not alone. And then, he raised his wand. The battle that followed was unlike anything Harry had ever experienced. Voldemort was powerful, his magic dark and twisted, his spells flying with a speed that was almost impossible to dodge. But Harry was strong too. The crown's power hummed in his blood, giving him strength and insight he'd never known before. He dodged and weaved, his wand a blur in his hand, his spells striking with a precision that surprised even himself. He could feel the Founder's magic flowing through him, guiding his movements, strengthening his will. You are worthy, Slytherin's voice whispered in his mind. You are the true heir. Now prove it. Harry felt a surge of power, and he unleashed a spell that he'd never used before. A spell that had been lost for centuries. A spell that carried the combined magic of all four Founders. Founder's Fury, he shouted, and a blinding light erupted from his wand. Voldemort screamed, his body convulsing as the light struck him. His wand flew from his hand, clattering to the stone floor. He fell to his knees, his face twisted with pain and fury. Impossible, he snarled. You cannot, you are nothing. I am not nothing, Harry said, his voice firm. I am the heir of Slytherin. I carry the legacy of the Founders. And I am the one who is going to defeat you. Voldemort looked up at him, his red eyes blazing with hatred. You will pay for this, Potter. I will destroy everything you love. I will. But before he could finish, the basilisk appeared. The ancient serpent rose from the shadows, its massive body coiling around Voldemort like a living cage. Its eyes were open, glowing with a fierce, protective light. "You are not worthy of the legacy," the basilisk hissed. "You are a pretender. A fraud. And you will not harm my heir." Voldemort screamed, trying to free himself. But the basilisk's grip was too strong. It tightened its coils, crushing the Dark Lord against the stone floor. "Please," Voldemort gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, I'll do anything." Harry looked down at him, his heart heavy with a mix of pity and disgust. This was the Dark Lord. The most feared wizard of the century. And he was begging. "You're pathetic," Harry said softly. "All this power, all this fear, and in the end, you're just a man. A broken, twisted man who let his hatred consume him." Voldemort's eyes widened, and Harry saw something he'd never seen before. Fear. "Harry," Voldemort said, his voice trembling. "Harry, please." "I'm not going to kill you," Harry said. "That's not what the legacy is about. I'm going to give you a chance to change. A chance to be something more than what you've become." Voldemort stared at him, his expression shifting from fear to confusion to something that might have been shame. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do that? I killed your parents. I tried to kill you. I've done terrible things." "I know," Harry said. "But the legacy isn't about revenge. It's about redemption. It's about giving people a chance to choose differently. And I'm giving you that chance." Voldemort was silent for a long moment. And then, slowly, he nodded. "I understand," he said. "Thank you, Harry. Thank you for giving me a chance." Harry stepped back, and the basilisk released its grip. Voldemort slumped to the floor, broken and defeated, but alive. "You're going to be all right," Harry said softly. "It's going to be all right." Voldemort looked up at him, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and wonder. "I don't deserve your mercy," he said. "Nobody deserves mercy," Harry said. "That's what makes it mercy." The war was over. Harry stood in the great hall, surrounded by his friends and allies, the crown's power humming in his blood. The students were cheering, their voices rising in a chorus of celebration. The founder's legacy had been restored. And Harry knew that the journey was just beginning. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes searching for the faces he loved. Ron and Hermione were there, their faces flushed with joy. Neville was there, his toad clutched to his chest. Draco was there, his expression one of grudging respect. And standing at the back of the hall, a faint smile on his ancient face, was Salazar Slytherin. "You have done well, Heir," the founder's ghost said. "You have restored the legacy. You have proven that the blood of Slytherin can be a force for good." Harry smiled, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you. For trusting me. For believing in me. You earned it," Slytherin said. "You earned all of it." Harry nodded, his heart full. He was the heir of Slytherin. The boy who lived. The one who had restored the legacy. And he was ready for whatever came next. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6, The Serpent King's Rise. The morning after Voldemort's defeat dawned grey and quiet over Hogwarts. Harry stood at the window of the Gryffindor common room, watching the mist curl around the castle towers like the ghosts of old memories. The celebrations had lasted long into the night, students laughing, crying, embracing in the great hall as the reality of what had happened sank in. But now, in the stillness of dawn, the weight of it all pressed down on Harry with a force that made his chest ache. He had done it. He had faced Voldemort and won. He had restored Slytherin's legacy and proven that the blood of the founder could be a force for good. The war was over. And yet, Harry felt emptier than he'd expected. "You are mourning," the basilisk's voice whispered in his mind, soft and understanding. "Not for what you have lost, but for what you have become." Harry nodded, his reflection staring back at him from the rain-streaked glass. The crown's power hummed in his blood, a constant reminder of the legacy he now carried. He was no longer just Harry Potter, the boy with the scar. He was the heir of Slytherin. The Serpent King. The one who had united the houses and defeated the Dark Lord. But who was he, really? Beneath all the titles and the expectations and the weight of destiny? I don't know who I am anymore, Harry whispered, his breath fogging the glass. I thought winning would make me feel complete. But I just feel tired. That is because you have been fighting for so long, the basilisk said. You have carried the weight of the world on your shoulders, Heir. Now, you must learn to set it down. Harry smiled faintly. How do I do that? You must remember who you were before the legacy found you, the basilisk said. You must remember the boy who stood in the mirror and saw his parents. The boy who made friends and found a home. The boy who was brave, not because he had to be, but because he chose to be. Harry's eyes filled with tears. The basilisk was right. He had been so consumed by the legacy, by the crown, by the war, that he'd forgotten the simple things. The things that had made him who he was. Thank you, he said softly. For reminding me. It is my purpose, the basilisk said. To guide you. To protect you. To help you become the wizard you were always meant to be. Harry turned away from the window, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. He had a lot of work to do. The wizarding world was in chaos, its old structures crumbling, its future uncertain. But he wasn't alone. He had his friends. His allies. His family. And he had the legacy of the founders, burning bright within him. The weeks that followed were a blur of reconstruction and reconciliation. Harry worked tirelessly to rebuild the bonds that had been broken by the war. He spoke with the ministry, advocating for reforms that would protect Muggleborns and ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. He met with the leaders of the pureblood families, urging them to embrace a new vision of unity and cooperation. And he continued his work at Hogwarts, teaching the students about the founders' true legacy, fostering the spirit of unity that had begun to blossom during the war. But the most difficult task was the one that lay closest to his heart. The restoration of Slytherin House. For centuries, Slytherin had been synonymous with darkness and hatred. Its students had been shunned, its legacy twisted, its founder vilified. Harry knew that changing that perception would take time, years, perhaps, or even generations. But he was determined to try. He began by speaking with the Slytherin students, listening to their fears and frustrations, understanding the pain they'd endured. He shared with them the true teachings of Salazar Slytherin, the writings that revealed a founder who was complex and flawed, but not evil. You are not defined by the reputation of your house, Harry told them. You are defined by your choices. Your actions. Your heart. And I believe that you can be the ones to change the narrative. To show the world that Slytherin is not a house of darkness, but a house of ambition, cunning, and strength. The Slytherins listened. And slowly, tentatively, they began to believe. It was during one of these meetings that Harry met the boy who would change everything. His name was Theodore Nott, a quiet, thoughtful Slytherin who had always kept his head down, avoiding the conflicts and rivalries that had plagued his house. He approached Harry after one of the gatherings, his expression uncertain. Potter, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Can I speak with you? Privately. Harry nodded, leading Theodore to a quiet corner of the common room. What is it? Theodore took a deep breath. I know about the crown. I know about the founder's ghost. I know about the basilisk. Harry felt his heart stutter. How do you? My father was a Death Eater, Theodore said, his voice flat. He told me things. About the chamber. About the heir. About the power that was supposed to be Voldemort's. But I never believed him. Not until I heard you speak. Not until I saw what you were trying to do. Harry studied the boy, his expression guarded. And what do you want from me? Theodore met his gaze, his eyes burning with a fierce determination. I want to help. I want to be part of what you're building. I want to show the world that Slytherin can be more than what it's been. Harry felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Then you're welcome," he said. "We need all the help we can get." Theodore became one of Harry's most trusted allies. He brought with him knowledge of the pure-blood families, their secrets, their alliances, their fears. He helped Harry navigate the treacherous waters of wizarding politics, forging connections that would have been impossible otherwise. And together, they began to build a new vision for the wizarding world. The first step was the creation of the Hogwarts Unity Council, a body composed of students from all 4 houses. The council would be responsible for fostering cooperation between the houses, resolving conflicts, and ensuring that the spirit of unity that had been forged during the war would be preserved for future generations. The council was met with skepticism at first. Many students were resistant to the idea of working with their traditional rivals, and the Slytherins in particular were treated with suspicion. But Harry and Theodore worked tirelessly to build trust, organizing events that brought students together, creating opportunities for dialogue and understanding. And slowly, the walls began to crumble. The turning point came during the Quidditch final. It was a match between Gryffindor and Slytherin, the 2 houses that had been rivals for centuries. The stands were packed with students, their voices rising in a cacophony of cheers and jeers. The tension was palpable, the old animosity simmering just beneath the surface. But then, something unexpected happened. During a particularly dangerous play, a Slytherin player, a girl named Daphne Greengrass, was knocked off her broom. She fell 30 feet, her body crashing into the stands below. The crowd gasped, and for a moment, the match was forgotten. Harry was on his feet before he knew what he was doing, racing toward the fallen player. He pushed through the crowd, his wand raised, his heart pounding with fear. "Move," he shouted. "Let me through." He reached Daphne's side and knelt beside her. Her leg was bent at an unnatural angle, her face pale with pain. But she was alive. Thank Merlin, she was alive. "Don't move," Harry said, his voice calm despite the terror that churned in his stomach. "I'm going to heal you." He raised his wand, the crown's power humming in his blood. He'd learned healing spells during his time in the chamber, ancient magic that had been lost for centuries. He murmured the incantation, and a warm, golden light enveloped Daphne's leg. The bone mended itself, the muscles knitting together. Daphne's face relaxed, the pain fading from her eyes. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you, Harry." Harry smiled, helping her to her feet. "You're welcome. Just be more careful next time, all right?" Daphne nodded, and then, to Harry's surprise, she threw her arms around him in a tight embrace. The crowd erupted in cheers, not just for Harry, but for what he represented. Unity. Healing. Hope. The match was called off, but no one seemed to mind. The students poured onto the pitch, Gryffindors and Slytherins embracing each other in a moment of shared triumph. The old rivalries had been forgotten, replaced by something new. Something better. Harry stood in the center of the crowd, his heart swelling with pride. This was what he had been fighting for. This was the legacy of the founders, restored. The months that followed were a time of healing and growth. Harry continued his work, building bridges between the houses, advocating for reform, and leading by example. The wizarding world was slowly recovering from the scars of the war, its wounds healing under the light of a new dawn. But Harry knew that his journey was not yet complete. The crown had been a gift, but it was also a responsibility. Its power had given him strength, insight, and wisdom, but it had also set him apart. He was no longer just a boy. He was a leader. A symbol. A king. And kings, Harry knew, had to make difficult choices. The most difficult choice came when Harry realized that he could no longer stay at Hogwarts. The school had been his home for 6 years, the place where he'd found friends and family and purpose. But his work was elsewhere now. The wizarding world needed him, needed the Serpent King to guide them through the uncertain times ahead. "I don't want to leave," Harry told Ron and Hermione, his voice heavy with sorrow. "But I have to. There's so much work to be done, and I can't do it from here." Ron nodded, his expression grim. "I know, mate. We all know. But that doesn't make it any easier. Hermione's eyes were filled with tears. We'll miss you, Harry. We'll miss you so much. Harry reached out and pulled them both into a tight embrace. I'll miss you too. But this isn't goodbye. It's just a new beginning. They held each other for a long moment, the weight of everything they'd been through pressing down on them. And then, slowly, they let go. Harry's final days at Hogwarts were bittersweet. He spent time with his friends, revisiting the places that had become special to him. He sat in the Gryffindor common room, watching the fire crackle and dance. He walked through the corridors, saying goodbye to the portraits and the ghosts. He visited the Chamber of Secrets one last time, standing before the statue of Salazar Slytherin. You have done well, Heir, the Founder's ghost said, its voice warm with approval. You have restored the legacy. You have united the houses. You have defeated the darkness. Harry smiled, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. For everything. For trusting me. For believing in me. It was not a matter of trust, Slytherin said. It was a matter of fate. You were always meant to be the one, Harry. The one who would carry my legacy forward. The one who would show the world what Slytherin truly meant. Harry nodded, his heart full. I won't let you down. I promise. The Founder's ghost smiled and faded into the shadows, leaving Harry alone in the chamber. He turned and walked toward the entrance, his steps echoing on the stone floor. The basilisk was waiting for him, its massive body coiled around the pillar. You are leaving, the basilisk said. I will miss you, Heir. Harry reached out and touched the creature's scales. I'll miss you too. But I'll come back. I promise. I will be waiting, the basilisk said. Always. Harry smiled and walked out of the chamber, closing the door behind him. The day of Harry's departure came too quickly. He stood at the gates of Hogwarts, his trunk packed, his wand in his hand. Behind him, the castle rose against the sky, its towers and turrets gleaming in the morning light. It was beautiful. It was home. And he was leaving it behind. Ron and Hermione were there, along with Neville and Theodore and a crowd of students from all four houses. They stood in a semicircle around him, their faces a mix of sadness and pride. We'll write to you every day, Hermione said, her voice thick with tears. And we'll visit. As often as we can. Harry nodded, his own eyes wet. I'll hold you to that. Ron stepped forward and clapped him on the shoulder. You're the bravest person I've ever known, Harry. Don't ever forget that. Harry laughed, the sound surprising him. I won't. And you're the best friend anyone could ever ask for. Don't ever forget that. Ron grinned, and they embraced, holding each other tight. And then, Harry turned and walked through the gates, leaving Hogwarts behind. The years that followed were a time of change and growth. Harry traveled the wizarding world, spreading the message of unity and cooperation that he'd learned at Hogwarts. He met with leaders and diplomats, advocating for reforms that would protect Muggleborns and ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. But he never forgot his roots. He visited Hogwarts as often as he could, reconnecting with his friends and allies, watching the school he loved continue to grow and flourish. And slowly, the wizarding world began to change. The old divisions faded, replaced by a new spirit of cooperation. The houses of Hogwarts were no longer rivals, but partners, working together to build a better future. The stigma against Slytherin faded, replaced by a recognition of the Founder's true legacy. And Harry, the Serpent King, became a symbol of hope and unity. It was on a quiet evening, years later, that Harry returned to the Chamber of Secrets. He stood before the statue of Salazar Slytherin, the crown's power humming in his blood. The basilisk was coiled at the statue's base, its eyes closed in contentment. I've come to say goodbye, Harry said softly. One last time. The Founder's ghost appeared, its form shimmering with a faint, golden light. You have done well, Heir, the ghost said. You have restored the legacy. You have brought peace to the wizarding world. You have become the wizard you were always meant to be. Harry smiled, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you. For everything. For trusting me. For believing in me." "It was not a matter of trust," Slytherin said. "It was a matter of fate. You were always meant to be the one, Harry. The one who would carry my legacy forward. The one who would show the world what Slytherin truly meant." Harry nodded, his heart full. "I won't let you down. I promise." The Founder's ghost smiled and faded into the shadows, leaving Harry alone in the chamber. He turned and walked toward the entrance, his steps echoing on the stone floor. The basilisk stirred, its eyes opening to watch him go. "Farewell, Heir," the basilisk said. "May your path be filled with light." Harry smiled, raising his hand in farewell. "Farewell, my friend." And then, he walked out of the chamber, closing the door behind him. Harry stood at the gates of Hogwarts, looking up at the castle that had been his home for so many years. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And it was time to let it go. He turned and walked away, his step steady and sure. The crown's power hummed in his blood, a constant reminder of the legacy he carried. But it was no longer a weight. It was a gift. A blessing. A promise of a brighter future. The Serpent King had risen. And the wizarding world would never be the same. The end.